Hello and welcome back to I'm Fucking Scared. My name is Beast and today we're back with I'm Fucking Scared. By which I mean we're back. Welcome back to the Wild Hunt and we're back with Hello Lady, Superior and Delicata. Everything is going to shit. Let's just, without further ado, get into this. The cherry trees in this park were set to sometimes bloom out of season. The locals were especially surprised when it happened at the start of autumn. Something similar was happening this year too. The season had passed, but there was one tree that was in full bloom, slightly to the south of the westward Tanuki Highway that was situated on to the north of Fukushima Station. There was a Tanuki Park, a park the locals often hung out in. However, it was always empty on weekday mornings, but this time there was a girl who didn't like crowds that much. She was under the aforementioned cherry tree, reading the morning newspaper.
昨夜の地震、震源は奥島市の地下40キロ。真下で揺れたにしては震度4。大した被害はなしか。
With fiery red hair tied behind her and the general aura of a wild beast, the girl was none other than Tamo Wakahito. Due to the incident at the plant, the academy was in a state of chaos. As a crown, she should have had her hands so full with work that every second should have counted. But things were so silent with her, for her, that she had to hold back a yawn. The next moment, her teary eyes were replaced with those of a cold machine. She heard someone approach from behind her.
してたなら声ぐらいかけろ。思わずやっちまうだろ。俺としちゃそっちの方が楽でいいけどな。
So I met up with Tamo once again. Late at night yesterday, I received a message from her. Didn't know how she got it, but she'd sent it to the fake address that Hishia used for open activities. We need to talk, it said plainly, which was very much like her.
まずは互いの無事と再会を祝おう。それで愛の告白かね。美しい夜景を共に囁くのがセオリーだが、白昼堂々というのも君らしい。
What happened to Sakura and Soroko since then? I wanted to ask Tamo that, but I wasn't shameless enough. Tamo grimaced in disgust and wordlessly threw me a tablet. I called and turned it on, just as expected. It instantly turned on an app that connected me to someone. She sounds interesting. The app was sound only. The faceless person on the other side spoke accent Japanese. It was hard to tell how old she was due to the voice filter, but she sounded flat to me. Oh, one of the like
成田真理だ。
sages, wasn't it?
私のサインを望むなら何枚でも腕を振るうとも。さて、ドクターが本日の会合の発起人なら尋ねるが、有意義な内容を期待しても良いのかね。
Making this voice only was a sign of extreme caution. I suppose she was wary of my Hamlet 12.
System 伝説的な名だ。私も実物と対面するのは初めてだが、本物なのかね。
I glanced at Tomo's unamused face as I tried to, as I said it to try and guess her role in this. I already knew that she was a specialist of some sort and joined the academy for some special purpose.
裏の裏とか呼ばれてる結社。超巨大なネットワーク。非在の実在。悪の源泉にして秩序の体現。知恵の蔵。ご体操だが、そいつは本物中の本物らしいぜ。
Trying to hide that she didn't want to be here, Tomo went and said that.
黒船の強力すぎる政治力や資金にどうしても腑に落ちない部分があったが、奴の背後にいるのはお前たちか。
事情が変わったというやつさ。俺とこいつらは本来敵と味方。五越同州ってわけだ。
思い出したぞ。アリアバータサーカー、クアドリガ、 あの夜店時野と並ぶ人類知性最高峰4人の一角。もっとも角は一つ欠けてしまったか。
一つ。お前にとっちゃ残念なお知らせ。時野先生は生きてるぜ。
At that moment, I heard a siren denoting that it was afternoon. What the fuck happened to Ruri, though?
正午か。
The men's watch on her left wrist rang out. Tokino Yumise was alone in her compartment within the plant, facing a vast amount of info. Cordelia, the SSDs and the automata she had, all of the Academy systems were on high alert. With Kurufuna gone, his room, which had bleeding-edge medical equipment as well as immense amounts of information, was the core of the Academy. The experiment was 2 days ago. The explosives Narita had set had made one of the hallways unusable. Because of that, Tokin was unable to make it to the control room and wasn't caught up in the massacre. She alone had survived. The damage assessment and repairs still weren't over, but when it came to secrecy and security, this place was good enough for her goal. Cordelia was constantly providing her with new information and displaying it on the monitor. There was more than just info about the Academy, however. There were also the N system, as well as live camera feeds from all over the Okushima area, complete with a digitalized manual report about it all. She was gathering, analyzing the vast amounts of vast volume of information at an impossible speed. There was also the vital data regarding Soroko and Saku, both of whom were intensely treated in a different room.
かわいい空子。見とる目。どうしてここまで。いや、あの子を責めても意味はない。すべての元凶は成田真理。
Two girls were linked to so many life support cords and pipes that they looked like parts of a machine. Soroko not only sustained physical wounds, abusing her halo superior had damaged her brain on a quantum level. It was as though her very soul was injured. It was a miracle that she was alive. Even if her vital stabilized, it was very unlikely that she would regain consciousness. However, Saku's state was, in a way, worse than Soroko's.
肉体的負傷は完全に回復しているが、意識が回復しない。事の因果がはっきりしないほど厄介な状況はないな。
She had to figure this out as soon as possible. But there was something more important to think about.
コーディリア、昨夜の地震関連の情報を。
Multiple windows appeared on the monitor.
震源は奥島市の地下 40km。そして大亀裂で計測された数値。
The words were cut short by the realization that Iro Takazaki was on her compartment with her.
どうかしたのですか、高崎。
As she tried to plainly talk to her, she felt that she was already under the influence. Though there was an incident recently, the plant was still off limits. And to enter here, one needed Tokino's personal ID. There was no way she wouldn't have realized that someone came in before she could order her SSDs to suppress her.
従ってください。わかった。
Tokino nodded and did a hand-wave gesture that deactivated the SSDs. The door to the compartment was then unlocked, letting in a rebel who was waiting in the hallway.
お見事です、高崎さん。私のハローでは体を操れてもとても鮮やかには参りませんわ。
Mitrie hid her mouth and spoke her impressions, hiding the fact that she was partially terrified. After all, Ero had just put the Tokino Yomise under her control without any proper resistance from her. Ero Takazaki's halo controlled the concept of love. Through the encounter with the owl, it had become something even more frightening. It broke the limits of halos that prevented them from directly controlling others, making all and any aspects of the mind become tainted with a fondness for Eru. She was a doll of love, adored and loved by all. Eru Takazaki was the final product of the born HMI bloodline of Takazaki, the puppet masters.
人は愛には逆らえないものらしいです。
ミトリー、お前は処分保留中の身。待機を命じたはずだ。どうしてここにいる？
Eruzelo didn't affect Tokino's mind or decision ability. That was why she looked at Mitri like she was an enemy.
体は動きます。今は待っていられる状況ではないでしょ。
Mitri bound the SSCs in place just to be safe and faced her mind-controlled dearest teacher with nothing but grace in her movement.
時の先生、こんな強引なやり方は望むところではありませんが、音無さんと桂木さんが倒れ、玉尾さんも姿を消した。手段を選ぶ余裕はありませんので。
では、皆さんのお楽しみ、ワクワク尋問ラウンドです。教えてください、時の先生。スクールの真実を。
いいだろう。ではまず。
On this day, the core of the academy fell, and to only 2 étoiles HMIs at that.
そうか。夜店時野は生きていたか。
Surprisingly, the fact that one of my targets was alive didn't make me feel much. It was as though I was told about the location of some pebble at the side of the road. If I met her, I would bring her down without hesitation. My trigger finger would move without a problem. But that was really it.
それよりも話を進めよ
う。そいつは割と意外な返事だな。それでは終わりを止める話をしよ
うか。With the introduction of the way, out of the way, it was time to talk about the real subject. An act that was akin to pointing knives at each other.
終わりか。初めから堅穏な言葉を使うものだな。玉尾、君はドクターの話を。
俺も聞くのはこれからだ。文句あんのか？
文句はないが疑問はある。玉尾のような現場がメッセンジャーではなくエージェントとは。
Tamo looked away like she didn't even care about my question. She asked like she knew the answer. Normally this would shake me, but knowing that she's part of the system makes this not the least bit surprising.
その問いには覚悟が必要だぞ。顔なき賢者よ。その先の言葉一つで、お前は相応の対価を支払うことになる。
I was overcome by an emotion akin to rage. She was trying to step into such a deep part of me that I had to become defensive. Whoops. Fuck. That was why Ruri was still alive. At the moment I pulled the trigger, I felt a chill which seemed to warn me about the end of something. It came right when the earthquake did. Without Taggy, everything would have ended even earlier.
昨夜の地震の原因、やはりルリか。
Clenched my fists in rage, raged myself for being relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to shoot Ruri then, and wouldn't have to do it now. It was so pathetic I couldn't laugh at myself. And that filled me with a hate-like anger. Was Shinri Narita always this fool?
待てルリって女が死にかけて地震が起きたってのか？そこの強情バカの変質者がぶっ殺しかけたから？
変質者はともかくバカとは言われのない誹謗中傷ではないかね。断固として抗議させてもらう。
そこは逆じゃねえのかよ。じゃなくてそういう話はしてねえだろ。そこまでのことなのか？オウルってのは俺たちが接触実験の影響に巻き込まれてあったデカブツだろ。オウルの触覚と予測されておる一種の防衛機構。人体が免疫という装置で自己独立を守るように。
黒船たちがハロースペリオルに手を出したからオウルの防衛機構が反応したと？その点はどうでもよかろう。問題は何が起きるか、そしてどうするか。
The faceless sage seemed very clear about that point.
何が起きる？影の影たるお前たちのような輩が日の下に這い出るほどの大事かね？
問い詰めなくていいのかよ。
現在、夜瀬時野は帰還命令を無視して
妙な話だな。まさか時の先生はこの間の実験とかいうのを再開するつもりなんじゃ。
2日前の接触実験以降、スクール直下にある来期列の深部で時空の揺らぎ、特異点が膨張を続けておるのを衛星が観測した。つまり奴は一度も中断せずに実験を続けておるということ。このままだと約50時間後に臨界を迎える。
臨界？爆発でもするのか？
週末が来る。
She said that so casually that I almost ignored it. It out of my ears and gave myself time to process it.
なんだそりゃ。いきなり過ぎやしないか。
いや、あれ。あの虚栄ならば十分にあり得る。
Contact experiment. My face off against Rudy. Whenever I felt that thing, I felt an unavoidable end.
オールの防衛機構が動いたきっかけは接触実験と見て間違いないだろう。黒船たちの研究はパンドラの箱だったわけだ。
The owl saw us as unnecessary. As a lesion. I don't fucking know if that's how you pronounce it. Just like the human body worked to get rid of cancerous tissue, we would be eliminated to let the whole live.
それに終末など珍しくはないよ。7年の旅路で幾度も目の当たりにした避けがたい悲劇を、手の施せない破滅を。世界とは認識可能な範囲を指す。人類が皆兄弟であるという事実には玉緒も何の実感も湧かないだろう。個人であれば半径50メートルがせいぜいと言われている。週末は数限りなく訪れる。昨日も明日も変わりなく、この瞬間にもどこかで誰かの何かが終わりを告げている。すべてが終わる機会さえこれまでも幾度となくあった。その一つがたまたま今日であるだけだ。
Tamo fell silent. She must have created many endings herself over the years.
人類という方程式が終末という答えを出すのであれば、システムはそれを見届ける。しかし、今回は事情が異なるのも事実。手を出したのは人だが、訪れる週末は外からのもの。
Her words became as monotonous as shifting gears. She talked with the detachment befitting someone above it all.
なるほど。夜店時野の実験を止めるのも外部からでは難しい。だからか。
The experiment was held in the facility underneath the academy, the shelter.
時間は限られ、生半可な戦力では無意味。爆撃やミサイルでの阻止も困難だろう。地下ごと潰せる規模の威力が日本の、それも地方とはいえ都市部近郊で炸裂すれば影響が大きすぎる。世界規模での流通、経済の混乱とそれに伴う衝突。最悪この事件をきっかけに第三次世界大戦が起きてもおかしくはない。
That would be as much of an ending as the one we're dealing with. It wasn't something the system could tolerate. The situation was awful, the worst it could be, actually. Despite that, Tamo looked somewhat relieved.
天井から見下ろすような狂慢だな。システムらしい言い回しだ。と言わせてもらうとしようか。
あっちらにリア王1を引き渡せ。あれが実験の焦点。システムの決定に従い永久封印すれば、時野の目論見は頓挫する。実験さえ止めれば、あとは時間をかけて順に解決すればよかろう。
成田真理に余計な手を出すなと。
I heard a clap on the other side. It was a denial of my assumption. I imagined giant gears blocking my path, silently and systematically moving forward without end. The faceless witch was plainly saying that didn't matter. Regardless if I was starting Surf, a golden king, a powerless infant, or the greatest swordsman of all, before the system of the world I was but a gear, a single screw. It was as it was. The gears in their place all spun in the direction they had to.
そうか。それがお前たちか。帝瑠璃は私がこの手で殺す。
Ruri's life belonged to me, no matter how foolish or sinful. She was my blood sister who I loved, and I wouldn't give her life to anyone else.
徳立ち去れ歯車。貴様の妄言は聞くに耐えない。
Twice as the woman that ended the call, seemingly unamused. At the same time, I heard a ringing from Tomo's chest pocket. She took it out, exchanged a few words with the person on the other side before throwing me a sharp glare.
お前のところのメイドと妹、監視を振り切ってどっかへ潜伏したんだってよ。
教会で少々羽目を外しすぎたようなのでね。迷惑にならないよう新しい家を探したまでだよ。無粋なひっつき虫にお引き取り願うのは当然だろ
う。残り50時間。ケツカッチンで探すのは面倒だから先に言っとくぞ。今回ばかりはてめえに勝手をさせる余裕はねえ。
Sun afternoon air froze, it became extremely tense.
確かにタイムリミットまでに黒船が残し、時野が引き継いだ終末とやらを食い止めたければ。
お前の妹を引き渡すか、スクールまで行って時野先生のやってる実験をぶち壊すか、二つに一つだ。
One of the two? No, there is a third option.
より多数にとっての利益を正義と呼ぶなら、瑠璃をシステムに引き渡すのが正しい行いだろ
う。Seemed that was what Tomo's client wanted. What she had to do was clear.But if Tomo was representing just the Shinri Knight, I was standing for nothing but his own ego.
しかし、私は身勝手な男だ。これ以外のやり方を知らないのだよ。誰が相手であろうと、玉を、君であろうと、答えは変わらない。
Listen, all I'm saying is we're going to murder the owl.
瑠璃とは私が決着をつける。そして、時野の実験とやらもこの手で止めてみせよ
う。お前の目的は復讐じゃねえのか。それならさっきのは悪くない取引だった。組織って代物は手を噛んだ犬を許さない。許してたら立ち行かないからな。そのことを俺は嫌というほどよく知っている。この先どう転ぶにせよ、時野先生は積んでいるんだ。それが分かってるからあの人も最後の時まで実験を続けているんだろうし。お前の妹のこともそうだ。奴らの言う通り引き渡せば全部丸く収まる。俺とやり合うこともない。終末とやらも避けられる。自分の手を汚す必要がどこにある。血のつながりってのは軽くねえだろ。わざわざ重荷を背負いに行くことはないって言ってんだよ。やってくれるんだから任せちまえよ。
This was the first time since we reunited. You know, since we met, she had been completely sincere with me.
そうやって君は誰かの代わりを務めてきたのか。よければ聞かせてくれないか。玉尾はどうしてそんな汚れ仕事を続けている？個人的な見解だが、君の性根はそちらとは反対側だろう。
質問を質問で返すなって L のバカが言ってたぜ。
失礼をした。先に質問に答えよう。奴らは言った。黙っていても私の願いは果たされると。この手を離れてもことは終わると。私がいてもいなくても世界は回ると。そう言ったのだ。
Tomo slightly closed the distance between us. She was stronger than me, so she was better from a range than from a range that I was half a step and I would be in her reach.
自分の手で決着をつけたいのか。時の先生と自分の妹を殺すために行くのか。
Her gaze pierced into me, questioning me, cornering
帝
me.
春水の復讐はとうに終わっているのだよ。多くの人間を踏みにじって復讐に来た愚かな男は結局のところ仇をその手で倒すこともできなかったばかりか、自分の復讐にも裏切られた。男は燃え尽きた。最初から死んでいた男が亡霊に戻っただけだ。何のおかしいこともない。消えてよかったのに生かされた。何もかも私が7年間休まず思い続けた願いも叶わず、なのに命は残った。だから行くのだよ。この手に残された約束を、なすべきことをなすためでもあるだろう。私にとって約束とは命より重い。立っている限り果たされねばならない。
Oops, the fucking webcam is off.
しかし本当は行きたいだけだ。私がそうしたいと思っているんだ。
なんだそりゃ。
人間とは行くものなのだ。英雄であろうと名もなき小さな魂であろうと、己の命という道を精一杯歩むことに変わりはない。それを無駄と笑う者こそ真に価値なき者。
Also, fun thing, I had a D&D session today, and Flynn didn't drop. He did, however, make a bunch of people drop. Basically, we started a raid on a bandit camp, and what we did was we would be, we would basically be attacking them and ambushing them on their way while they run away. As Flynn would like just climb onto the like a wall around the fucking climb onto a wall around the camp, and around the camp were placed a bunch of oil and meat drums, like barrels. So Flynn just like went up there, just like was like a really nice one with like 4 at once. So he just fucking like blew it up. Just blew up the fucking barrels and kept making more and more of the barrels blow the fuck up. As just like he managed to blow up like overall 6 barrels before the Barbarian of the group was being fed up and started dragging him with her because she does no longer trust him to go anywhere alone because he drops so often.
どんなものであれ、意志には行いには結果がある。結果は刻まれ続いていく。それが世界だ。小さくわずかな者たちの上げるあまたの声が奏でる歌だ。無慈悲な運命という嵐で我々をもてあそぶ世界のありさまに流されて歯車垂れと歌う呪いに、お前たちの声など聞こえないと笑い飛ばしてやろう。それが成田真理の、そう、復讐だ。
バカみたい。
男というのは根っこがバカな生き物なのでね。意地を張らずに生きていけるたくましさを持つ者もいるのだろうが、私にそんな強さはなかった。
つまんねえ話だった。聞いて損した。でもそれがお前の理由ならしゃあねえな。
君の理由をまだ聞かせてもらっていないぞ。
大した理由じゃないぜ。俺は数えきれないぐらい終わらせてきた。そいつがどういう意味なのかわかる前からそうしてきた。だから今更なのさ。罪悪感なんて今も昔もありゃしない。そういう家に生まれついたんだ。でもな、終わらされたやつにはんなことは関係ない。俺みたいなやつは汚れたまま突っ走って最後はドブにでもはまってケツまずくのがお似合いなのさ。
She talked with wind-like clarity and without any sadness. Instead of choosing a path she would be satisfied with, she chose to stand on the path before her. So it must have been what she had to do.
そうか。正直に答えてくれたことを感謝しよう。君の前途に祝福あらんこと。
これからやり合ってどっちかが退場って時に言うセリフかね。
Tamo shrugged and grinned wryly before bending forward and starting a clash of lives. She like starts charging at him, suddenly he's just gone, like, what the fuck?
以上がスクール計画の経緯と最終目的だ。
Influenced by Eru, Tokin revealed to them things untold to the academy students as well as Taigi.
すべてはそこへ至らんがための過程。帝の殲滅も大亀裂にスクールが作られたのも HMI を人造したのもリア王を揃えるのも。
She was describing the project with a hint of passion in her words. It was a project that included horrid things such as the culling of onslaught syndrome patients and human experimentation. Faced with the fact that a teacher she respected was involved in such research, made even Mitri lose her words.
それはここまで人道に戻る行いを繰り返して目指すべき先なのですか？
お前ともあろう者が何を寝ぼけている。人類の歴史上いかなる発展繁栄も例外なく悲劇という道を踏破した結果だろう。私は自らの非道にも死んだ者たちにも一片の後ろめたさを抱いてはいないよ。それを感じることがあるとすれば、この歩みが残らず無駄であったと思い知らされた時だ。
Tokino was controlled by her love for Eru, but she was still the same Tokino Yomise. Her words were still her own.
接触実験もですか？危険と分かっているのでしょう。であればどうしてあれほど急に実践されたのです？
最後の機会だったからだ。
She finally displayed some negative emotion. It looked like bitterness.
きっかけは成田真理だ。奴は帰国直後、花園武と桂木新山を殺害した。帝事件の関係者が相次いで死んだため、システムはスクールに査察を入れた。表向きの話だ。実際は理事長の罷免であり、計画の無期凍結だった。引きこもりの灰色にとって理事長は何よりもあの黄金の眠り姫は都合の悪い存在だった。機会を伺っていた。
定番の派閥争いですね。人間はいつでもどこでもやることが変わりなくて笑ってしまいます。
まったくだ。残機に耐えん。委員会はリア王1の永久封印を命じた。唯一のジャービルなくしては実験そのものが成り立たない。その前に結果を出す必要があった。
それが週末の足音が聞こえるこの現状ですか？
The hopeless situation made Mitri put on an exasperated face. In response, Tokino shrugged.
確かにな。科学者としては垂涎だが、人間としては滑稽の極み。笑っても構わないぞ。
Mitri looked at the monitors and found the real-life camera feed of Fukushima. There she saw people living their normal lives, completely clueless about the impending doom. So I want to know why the screen is shaking still. Like, the screen never stopped shaking. Is this still the earthquake going on? I just want to know. Why is the screen still shaking? Even if she couldn't see them in the feed, there was no doubt many lives and interactions were wholesome, and there were no doubt many lives and interactions that were wholesome and precious.
笑う余裕もありませんわ。昨日を悔いるよりも明日への道を探求するよりも、私は今日を守らねばなりません。
お前個人には悪い話ばかりではなかったがな。兜山みとりは正常な HMI としての安定を取り戻した。どの程度維持できるかはわからないが、おそらく接触実験の影響だろう。
お礼を申し上げる気分にはなれませんけれど、さまつはさておき、 問題は成田真理。彼はいずれ必ずスクールへ戻る。ここに時の先生がおられる以上、憎悪を刻んだ己の志を途中で投げ出したりはしない。
道理だな。帝春水の報復は非合理的な愚行だ。しかし人間としては理解も同意もできる。憎悪、怨恨、報復、人類が業を克服するのは彼方の夢か。
人事のように彼をそうしたのは他ならぬ先生でしょう。ご自分の罪を恐れないのですか？
罪も罰も人の作り出した概念だよ。見えないものを信じるのは人間の豊かさだが、無駄な機能でもある。
Mitri loudly closed her fan as to say that she heard enough. In her eyes there was an unbreakable will.
成田真理は我々が倒します。理由はどうあれ、彼には罪がある。先生とスクールに災いをもたらす以上、看過できません。
守ってくれるとはな。お前は私たちのスクールの研究の非道を非難したのでは？
その犠牲なくしてこの場所が実現しなかったのも事実なのでしょ？理事長や時の先生はこの時代、この現代ではまだ行き場を持たない私ども HMI に救済を与えてくれました。どんな救いも屍の上に立つ伽藍なら、汚れを恐れて投げ捨ててしまえば、それこそ全てに意味がなくなってしまう。そんなことはきっと彼女も喜ばない。死んだ者たちの憎悪も恨みも踏みにじって、我々は差し伸べられた手を感受しましょう。その上で誤りは正し、より良き道を探しましょう。
リア王1もおそらく帰ってくるだろう。
先生を恨んでいるからですか？
そんな可愛げがあるかはともかく、リア王1が知っている世界は灰になった故郷と地下施設だけだ。行く当てのない人生の始まりに私を一発殴っておこうぐらいは思うはずさ。回収の機会があるとすれば。
残念ながら先生の実験はここまで。帝瑠璃は存在自体が我々を脅かす。殺せないならば封じるしかない。
リア王1がいなければあらゆる研究が頓挫する。 HMI であるお前が未来を紡むのか？
未来を守るのです。兜山の血が今の私に継がれているように、過去から受け継いできたものを次の奏者に手渡すまで守り抜くのが新しいものの務め。それが帝瑠璃にとっての地獄であろうと、兜山みとりは彼女の死となり災いとなりますわ。
She knew what King Lear I was capable of. Despite being more than fully aware that Rudi was a monster above all, Mitri Kaputiyama would put her pride and life on the line to face her. It was the only path she could choose.
空子との超高レベル HMI 同士の闘争という極限状況を超えて膝橋を登ったお前のハロー。マクスウェルの悪魔の情報量は策にも匹敵するだろう。しかしお前では万に一つもない。リア王ではない以上。
どういう意味ですの？リア王は力の種別ではなく、ハローの枠を超えた最高の力。
それならどうして最高のハローをリア王と呼ぶのか。
それはシェイクスピア最大の悲劇の名が最高のハローにはいえふさわしくない。
Mitri began feeling as if she just noticed something obvious. Tokino looked at her like she was a student who forgot to write her name on an exam paper.
7年前、理事長と私がリア王1を捕らえられたのはまだ幼く弱かったからだ。今となってはあれを打ち破る可能性は同じリア王。現存するのはあと一つのみ。
方法を考えるまでです。
そんなものが存在すると？
高崎さん、一つ無茶なお願いがあるのですけれど。
待て、策に干渉させるつもりか？昏睡の原因もまだ。
原因は分かっております。ですから高崎さんでなけれ
嫌です。
The unexpected response from Mitri made Mitri doubt her ears.
サクが目覚めない原因は心理的な拒絶です。サクが望んでいないなら、このままが一番いいはずです。
高崎さん、でもそれは。
週末がどうかしたんですか？自分は人形です。心なんてない。主の持ち物でしかない。死ぬのなんて怖くない。サクは目覚めたがっていません。苦しい現実しかないここへ戻りたくないと言っているんです。それなら、エルに守る理由は、ない。明日が終わろうが、1秒先に滅んでしまおうが、同じことです。エルはサクを苦しめたくありません。苦しんでほしくありません。だから、ミトリの頼みは聞けません。
Erutagzaki said that as plainly as a doll would.
それは、あなたの本心。
違うに決まってるじゃないですか。人形に心なんてあるわけないんだから。
まったく。人形に心がないなんてザレ言は、一体誰が言い始めたんでしょうね。
Mitri made a sad, nostalgic smile like she just opened up a photo album showing her when she was little.
大切にしてあげた人形は、家族の一員になると言います。空っぽの人形にだって、家庭を経れば、魂が宿るのです。そして、魂のある者は心を持つ。高崎さん、あなたは苦しめたくないと言った。苦しんでほしくないから、目を覚まさせないと。おとなしさんが幸福であれと願うのは、彼女が好きだから、ではないのですか？
To wish bliss upon what one treasures was a primal prayer carried by everyone.
高崎エル。あなたは最初、確かに人形だった。記憶も経験も、感情も魂も、ろくに持たない空っぽの器として、スクールへやってきたのでしょう。
Still wanna know why the fucking screen is shaking. You know what, let me just quick save, I guess. Nah, don't quick save. Proper save. Like, quick load, I guess.
おお、ハレルヤ
Now let's reload this. Nope, still shaking.
あなたは、でも、ここで過ごした日々が、その記憶は、空っぽの体を埋める、血となり肉となっている。それは、あなたにとって、不要なものですか？
わかりません。エルの世界はここです。本当にここだけです。高崎の里では本当に何もなかった。そんなちっぽけな記憶が本物の心のはずがないでしょ。
私たちがなすべきをなさぬのなら、スクールは、あなたの小さな思い出のありかも、失われてしまうかもしれない。
でも、そうしたらサクが。
あなたはとても綺麗です。人が人形を作るのは美しいからかもしれない。人と同じ形で、人にある歪さも不自由さもない。人を狂わせる嘆きも迷いも憎しみも妬みも持たない。私は成田真理を恨みます。彼の怒りと憎悪がどれほど正当であろうと、この感情がどれだけ不毛と分かっていても、故郷を壊した彼を許すことはできない。我ながらなんたる醜さ。先生がおっしゃった通り、人の子、まるで底なしの黒い海のような。けれど、私も親友から痛いほど教えられました。誰かを思う心には、本当に眩しいくらいの力があるのだと。
エルには、わかりません。
いつか、わかる時が来ますよ。あなたの空にも、きっと輝く虹が見出せます。
Saying that like a prayer, Mitri turned
どこへ行
around.
くのですか？
あなたが この後どうされるかはお任せします。明日にも何もかも消えてしまうかもしれない。最後くらいは自分の望むがまま、思うがまま、好きなことをしてはいかが。私もそういたしますから。
好きなようになんて何もないのにできるわけないじゃないですか。
Alright, stop shaking finally! The sound of her call was drowned out by the compartment door shutting behind Mitri. "50 hours had passed since the unusual earthquake in Okushima. It was late at night, right after the date changed. The helicopter of the MSDF base in T Prefecture was in a strange state. The heliport of the MSDF. 3 helicopters idling there were all unmarked, ghosts as they were called. They had 22 people in 2 squads. Besides that, there were the pilots and the 2 guests, making up a total of 30 people. No one there was JSDF, and the guests were myself and Tammo, both walking on a runway to board one of the helicopters."
一触即発ならぬ一触蒸発となりかねないこの状況で投入されるのがアーミーではなくポリスとはいささか驚いているよ。
この国の流儀ってのがあるんだよ。お前みたいなヤバいとこから来た変態のドンパチ脳と一緒にするな。施設がないから開示に間借りする羽目になってるけど。
Yesterday, Adipata Sarkar provided us with info. Tamo's client's response to that would be this raid. These elites would break into the academy, capture Tokinoyomi-sen, and stop the experiments. And we would take part in it.
さっと。この国で唯一公式に実践を経験している怖いおっさんども。お前や俺みたいな野良犬と一緒にしたら悪いぜ。
As we passed the row of troops, Tamo timidly and awkwardly saluted them. They responded with a perfect salute befitting elites, making Tamo's face stiffen up.
全然ビビってないからな。ちょっと驚いただけだから。
よくわかっているとも。今度は私から一つ聞きたい。どうして私との決着ではなくこんな手段を選んだのかね。わざわざ依頼人を説得して。
説得ってのは違うな。こいつは損得さ。システムなんて商売敵に任せずに自分たちで抑えてしまえば得るところがある。それだけの話。俺はそいつに乗っかって自分の安全を買っただけだ。お前と本気でやり合うとどっちにしてもろくな結果になりそうもねえからな。お前こそよくも一緒に来いって話にひょこひょことついてきたもんだぜ。絶対一人でどっか行くと。
いついかなる時も借りは返すのが私の心情なのだよ。君は私との戦いを取り下げた。それがどんな理由であれ。
I had to return this favor. It was my etiquette to stay by her side at least until we arrive.
ま、飼い犬だってたまにはやんちゃしたくなるのさ。
待ちたまえ、玉尾。
Called out to her as she, with clarity on her face, kicked the ramp and prepared to board the chopper.
なんだよ、まだなんか。
He's going for it. There we go. I slightly approached her from behind and grasped her not so excitable breasts. I moved my hand with heated passion, joy, and my heart. In case I don't get a CG to use.
君への絶えざる感謝と昨日の誹謗への抗議を込め、放満への遠い道のこの2日の歩みを私は天地に隠れもなく確かめよう。大いなる衝動のまま、かの哲学者も曰く、だが
まずお前から死ね
She attacked me with a fist from above, but I, of course, evaded it. Three choppers seamlessly flew towards the deep, dense darkness hiding the Academy school building. modern structure that truly stood out in this otherwise untamed land.
待て、あれを見ろ。
The Cordelia copter coming in. Almost beast-like instincts, or perhaps reception honed by the many battles she's been in, gave her some sort of warning, and she bent out of the pilot's seat and pointed ahead at the school building. Suddenly there was an explosion. With a blast, the entire second floor was shrouded in fire. With an intense, unfiltered roar, the place was instantly drowned in flame.
突然爆発したが、あれを見せたかったのかね。
なんで爆発？スクールで一体何が起こって？じゃなくて、見ろって言ったのはその隣の校舎だ。
Ow. Fuck. She pointed at the window of the main school building. There you could see Irotakazaki standing there like a silver trap for any beast.
簡単に近づけると思わないでください。入園料は高いです。
あとは任せるとか言われましても、言うは易し、アクションは激おこと申します。常に完璧な仕事がモットーのメイドの水面の下のあがきも考えやがれ。
Like, my motto as a maid is to always do a flawless work. So I would love it if it would stop giving me such hard jobs so I could do them flawlessly more easily. Isha whined about her work conditions. She was currently in one of the safe houses she had secured in town. It was an abandoned house near Miyama and was as ruined outside as it was inside. The church they used as a hideout was destroyed by a sibling fight that the attention drawn to it forced them to abandon it. While this place was not nearly as comfortable, it was away from prying eyes. Through Tamo, they established a cooperative relationship with the Japanese police, but Narita and Hisha both have engaged in illegal acts. Hisha's job was to secure an escape route, and...
あっちゃ、成田様たちがアイキャンフライする前に、こちらの出発も間に合いそうです。
To do her other job, she fixed her posture and looked at the corner of the room before letting out a sigh.
また食事に手をつけられなかったのですね。人参を食べないと何が大きくなりませんよ。ヒシアの自慢の品ですので、一口言ったらほっぺころり。
In the corner of the room, there was Ruri sitting in a fetal position. If she was any paler and wasn't breathing, you could mistake her for a real corpse. The heat of her body and mind seemed to be completely lost. After Ruri lost to Narita and Taigi collapsed, Hishia's master, for reasons unknown, had let the girl live. She'd been like this ever since. She wasn't speaking, moving, or standing. She didn't even show any resistance when getting carried here.
邪魔にならないのは結構ですが、若い娘がゴロゴロと一日寝ているだけとは。ヒシアは呆れて言葉もありません。猫の方が癒しになる分、役に立つというものです。
The Ruri from before would be wary of the system or government agents coming to retrieve her. But as she was now, she was no different from baggage. What the fuck is this? The fuck? I don't see anything. What's poking me?
すがすがしいほど見事なルーザーっぷり。そんなにお兄様に敗北されたのがショックだったとは。これだから、人生経験のない箱入りおぼこは。
Despite Rudy's non-reactiveness, Ishia gave her a perfect maidenly gesture before picking up the untouched food tray.
そんなですと、大義様に笑われてしまいますよ。
She was wary of it, and even expected it. However, Rudy became hostile and moved so quickly that Hishia couldn't even turn around. The corpse-like girl grabbed Hishia by the neck and pushed her against the wall at an immense speed. The impact that made Hishia feel like she was buried in the wall briefly made it impossible for her to breathe.
なるほど。お薬はこれでしたか。ヒシアとしたことがこんなに乙女とは思わず見落としていました。
あれの残りはどうしたの？
Angelic crystalline eyes burning like wisps in the night. They had a magic to them different than the one from when she attacked the church. It seemed like it was breaking through a dark veil of sediment. She was akin to a fallen angel reaching from the depths of hell.
怪物である瑠璃様がそんなことをお尋ねになってどうされると。
理由、そんなの。あいつは私は帝瑠璃を犯した、怪我した。だから。
She suddenly realized that she didn't know what to say beyond that.
だから私は一体どうしようと。
The moment the maid mentioned Taigi, her conscience began boiling and she lost herself with a rage driving her to tear her apart, so it seemed. However, upon some introspection, she realized that her feelings were as light as feathers.
胸が痛いというやつですか。
バカなこと。痛みなんて私にはない。リア王1はあらゆるものを凌駕する。性能を低下する苦痛は淘汰される。動作を阻害する苦悩は排除される。機能として傷つくことなんてありえないし、そんなものがなくても私は成長する。
バカみたいな話です。そんなだから何がご自分を苦しめているのかわからないのですね。
メイドの分際で身の程をわきまえなさい。私は帝瑠璃なのよ。新たな頂、人類の最先端。誰よりも強い。
強いと言っても成田様に負けちゃいましたけどね。だんだん首が締まってまいりました。視界が黒い。とっても。
余計なことしか言わない口のついてる首はいっそ取ってしまおうかしら。
それはそれで構いませんが、よろしければしばらくのご容赦を。今夜は成田様を迎えに行かねばなりませんので。
この後に及んでお兄様に尽くすか、はしため。
The fact that Hishia couldn't live without clinging to someone filled the duty with disgust.
それがヒシアの自由ですから。
どこが自由なの？お兄様の持ち物の分際で。
自由とは自分で決めたルールに従うことです。それだけは裏切らずに生きていくことです。ま、私の場合は他に選びようがなかったんですけどね。瑠璃様とよく似ているでしょう。
She couldn't have her head removed at Rudy's whim, yet Hishia seemed to be at peace.
おかしな女だわ。私を恐れないのね。脅威と思っているくせに恐怖と思っていない。そうね。つまるところ、お前も結局人ではないのね。
Like she could have her head removed at Rudy's whim.
何も持たない私を救ってくれたのは成田様です。あの人が好きに生きていいと言ってくれた時、私は誰かの道具である以外の生き方を思いつかなかった。だってそうでない生き方なんてとうになくしていたんですから。快楽のために同類を殺す動物は実はたくさんいるんです。イルカもカワウソも犬猫も。 弱者を踏みにじるのに協力する。生命とはそのようにできている。でも同類の不幸を当人するのは人間だけです。他者のあがき破滅へ至る過程を社会を守る必要悪ではなく、娯楽として消費できる。悪のための悪をなせる。そこのない人間の悪に比べれば、あなたは強いだけです。なんて可愛らしい。
Rudy put power into her fingers. She could break humans like twigs. However, Hishia's head was still on her shoulders.
私と姉妹はそんなものに作られました。どこかから買われてきて、誰かの快楽のために教えられたのは、殺し方、壊し方、奪い方。人間であった頃の中身なんて残らず押しつぶされて消えてしまった。私はなく、9つの中の1でしかないもの。ですが、一つだけ私のものがあります。菱や森という名は成田様からいただきました。何もかも奪われて、何の意味もない復讐だけを支えに生きようとしていたあの人が、それでも私のためにくれたものです。今も私は生きる意味も理由もわからない。でもこの何もないところで成田様は、それでも誰かを思う心があることを証明してくれました。それで十分。私はそれだけで歩いていけます。この命は全部成田様のために使おうと決めたのです。あ、やっぱり訂正します。瑠璃様は似ているけど別物ですね。空っぽの私は一つで満たされた。瑠璃様は何もかも最初から持っていたから、ずっと空っぽのままなのを知らなかった。
お兄様と同じで口の減らない。
それは私のためですか？それともご自分のため？
何を言って。いえ、これは。
There was a droplet on her cheek. She touched it and felt searing heat. Why was she crying? Her halo had recovered from night influence and was now working properly. Any new pain, she should have been surpassed right away, and yet...
大切な痛みは消してしまいたくはないですよね。
何を言っているの？
Rudy had finally realized what was wrong with her. Tagi's final moments reminded her of her mother, the woman that had sacrificed herself despite having lost it all.
いえ、どんな痛みも乗り越えてしまえるのに、そうしないのは、自分でそうしたくないと思っているのではないのかと。まあ、どうでもいいお話でした。羨ましいです、瑠璃様。私は武器ですから、そう作られてしまった以上、最後までそう。でも瑠璃様は、どんな道でも選べるのでしょう。そうそう、お尋ねの件、大義様は知り合いの仲介屋に預かってもらっています。最悪誰も戻ってこなくても、万事うまくしてくれる手はずです。
Still holding Hishia, Rudy tilted her head as though
それ
daydreaming.
なら、お兄様はどこへ？
スクールです。夜店時乃と相引きに。
じゃあ、そこへ連れて行って、私は帝瑠璃。人類の最先端。取り戻さなくちゃいけないものがある。
She wasn't hesitating. Back then, Rudy herself had decided to fly. No matter where it took her, she would fly until the end. She tightened her grip over Hishia's neck. It was obvious that what would happen if she refused.
ご自分で走って行かれた方が早いのでは。スクールの場所はご存知でしょう。
道、覚えてない。何よ。文句がある？
教会に殴り込んできた時は。
適当に歩いて、 気配の大きそうなところへ順番に押し入っただけだし。
まさか、こんな場面でハードシーンの裏のどうでもいい驚愕の事実を聞かされる羽目になるとは。かなり最悪です。
だいたい、道を覚えるのなんて私の仕事じゃないんだから。はしためや雑式の仕事なんだから。
人の話を聞かない兄と、最初から話すつもりのない妹。嫌というほど呪われた血のつながりを感じさせる。
So Rurimikado put on an angelic smile she wore the moment they met, decided to declare it the start of hell.
返事を聞かせなさい。石や森。
Feeling like she was cold, she woke up. The moment she regained consciousness, she found herself in a familiar place. It was a room completely devoid of light, neither the normal nor the emergency lights were on. The only reason she knew that she was at the academy, probably the infirmary, was the moonlight leaking in through the open curtains. Having just woken up, she was still barely conscious. The last thing she remembered was the moment she lost against Narita back at the plant. She got up from the bed, and her bones began creaking as though she'd been out for days. The silence of the seemingly empty school building made her restless, so she quickly changed into a uniform placed on the side of the bed and jumped into the shoes on the floor. The door wasn't powered, so to leave the room she had to use the emergency lever. The empty school building made her feel like she was in a desert at night. There were no lights coming from any of the buildings she could see through the windows. It wasn't right. This wasn't right. Even if all of Fukushima had a power cut, the academy had an underground power facility that would keep it powered. Oh wait. Looking up, she saw a full moon and something, likely a bird, flying in front of it. Coming back to her senses, she ran outside. After all, she was the crown's at the edge of the school building and took into a deserted wasteland. She staggered and looked at the hands she was using to support against the wall. Her vision turned red. The disgust made her vomit. It was caused by the truth forced upon her when her memories were linked to Rudimikado's during the owl contact and experiment. She had lost control of her body more than a few times now. After all, that was what she was. She was an imitation created by using Pygmalion, the Ascension nanomachine drug developed from the plant, otherwise known as Rudimikado. She was prime material that could reach the pinnacle they called King Lair, and as such, she couldn't escape the influence of the original. That was why it was obvious that what Sako Tanashi did while Rudimikado was in control of her. Ruri was unable to move, so she used Sako's body. There were many invitations, so she couldn't use it freely, but her power over this tool was strong enough for her to achieve her objective. To Ruri, her many poor imitations were akin to obnoxious flies. Sleeping Beauty crushed them as though killing time, and her tool for this was Sako. She vomited. The red in her vision, as well as the feeling of guts still on her hands, made her remember the shape of the lives she snuffed out, which made her vomit over and over. Whoops. Charming. She couldn't stop even after her stomach was rendered empty. Ruri's memories were a trigger. Memories that she would have... The memories that she would have did her best to ignore had now overflown and overwhelmed her. She reaped, she cut, she tore apart. Thoroughly, relentlessly, and in minute detail, she... There was no balance or order in her dry laughter. Were the things on her cheeks tears, or fragments of her sanity? Her heart ached, her reasoning was already shattered. How blissful it would be to lose her heart as well. Throw it all away and escape into a mad sleep. No such salvation came. She couldn't run, and the hellish memories continued attacking her, not letting go for a moment. She wanted to use her power to protect, and she believed that this time she would be able to. It was all wrong from the start. She'd made a deal with the devil, and she had to pay the price at the worst possible time. Her shivering legs couldn't take her a single step further anymore. When she thought that,
ごきげんよう、おとなしさん。
a greeting that didn't suit the situation at all brought her back to reality. With tears in her eyes from having just vomited, she looked up at the hallway ahead. There was Mitri, standing like a cold goddess of the moon. The familiar vivid red uniform now looked as dreadful as the Reaper's gown. Her close friend walked up to her with the same smile she always did, which only made Sako more terrified. It felt like she was about to be judged for her sin.
成田真理と帝瑠璃が来ますわ、おとなしさく。じっとしている暇はありません。
無理よ。私は。
She's slowly shaking her head. Sako backed away. Mitri, still smiling, said something that brought Sako more despair than ever before.
帝瑠璃に支配権限を奪われていたことですか？
どうして、それを。
ええ、知っておりますわよ。見ましたもの。接触実験には、エトワール級の HMI は残らず巻き込まれました。私たちも、あなたや瑠璃の記憶に触れました。これまで何があったのか、
Whoops. The face like she was about to break down, Sako vomited yet again. Her stomach was empty, but that was about all she could do. Lady Mikado used Sako Tanashi to reap countless fakes. His hands that were meant to protect were stained with so much blood and death that it drove her insane.
さあ、お立ちください。
However, Mitri didn't seem to care.
あなたはクラウン、その筆頭。己がどんな様だろうと、先頭に立たねばならない。人には明かりが必要です。あなたが折れれば、続く者も折れる。見せねばならない。
無理言わないで。
She screamed. It was a voice of resignation, of rough rejection. Mitri knew all that she did. If Mitri knew all that she did, she should have also known full well that Sako wouldn't be able to do anything like that again.
もう嫌。どこへも行けるわけないでしょ。
An explosion of unfocused emotion. A moment later, the school building became distorted. Without sound or light, invisible threads sliced the ferro-concrete tomb. Both the concrete and the iron reinforcement were cut like jelly. The smoothness made Sako gasp. She had no idea that Mitri had such power. Of course she didn't. This wasn't a power Mitri had, but one she acquired, the Halo Superior she brought back from beyond the veil. She said that the slashes of her master were so fast that wounds were opened only after they were cut. Sako's chest was cut diagonally with a line so straight that not even the greatest blades could mimic it. Mitri was serious. She was actually intending to kill Sako. If Sako hadn't taken a step back upon seeing Mitri's terrifying gaze, she would have been sliced along with the building. The cut sliced an artery, making her bleed so much that there was a stain not just on her clothes but on the floor as well. The searing heat finally made her realize that she was actually cut, making Sako lose her words. After all, it meant that both her subconscious counter-halo as well as the stagnation field that she reflexively created were cut through like butter. There was no way to break through the 2 layers of King Layer 3's defense. That was only true with physical laws applied. Mitri was able to reach the result of severance by precisely controlling the border between the physical territory and normal space. It was akin to cutting a picture along with the paper it was drawn on. No matter how strong the armor in the 3rd dimension, it was meaningless against this. The offensive defense that negated all halos that tried to influence Sako was unable to keep up with Mitri. In terms of processing power, her Halo Superior was in the same tier as King Layer 3. The armor that had always protected Sako was broken. She touched the blood on her chest that the heat brought back a memory. The pain that she had distanced herself from after her halo awakened has now returned. That was why she was. That was why she, as she was now, was basically what she was back then, a powerless girl overcome by fear. The wound was deep, her pulse was growing weaker by the second. The red puddle below her showed her. What? The red puddle below showed her, growing weaker. Losing more will than heat or strength, Saku looked up at Mitri, unable to stand. She wrung out a breath-like voice. Not even she could tell if she was resentful because Mitri tried to kill her. Perhaps this was how her victims felt before she killed them. Mitri's eyes were as cold as ice as she sat there.
あなたがうずくまれば続くものもうずくまる。
She opened the fan in her right hand. This time she would give her all to finish off Saku once and for all. They knew each other well enough for her to know that. Mitri's personal territory threads of superior power were akin to a heat haze, impossible to perceive for all but those touched. They surrounded Saku like appendages of a living creature. Mitri's surroundings warped as though put through a lens. First Saku thought that was because she was bleeding, but that wasn't it. There was no way she could know it. It was caused by an air concentration difference due to the same thing Mitri used against Sorako. Concentrated nitrogen projectiles. 1, 2, 6, 12, 24. In exchange for making them smaller, she was able to create more. This made it impossible for Saku to run. There was already enough power here to obliterate the school's building's floor, but she kept on adding more.
立てないのならあなたはいてはならない。
Mitri's halo controlled phenomena at the molecular level. It was a miraculous power akin to Maxwell's demon. This peak that she reached by contacting the owl was an unavoidable limit that had been thrust before her. It was a power that excelled at controlling what already existed. It could turn 1 into 3 or 5, but never take the first step of turning 0 into 1. The world was in her hands, but she was unable to discover anything beyond it. Only those who were capable enough could channel recklessness to turn the unknown into known. Mitri wasn't ashamed of this, however. It was merely a matter of how she was and whether she had the aptitude. After all, people couldn't live on nothing but dreams of tomorrow.
けれど今日に明日の礎たれというのなら明日にそれだけの価値があると信じさせてくれなければ甲斐がありませんわ。立てないならいっそこの場で終わってしまいなさい。あとは私が引き受けましょう。
She closed the fan, and then without any hesitation, she unleashed the final strongest attack. I don't even know what the fuck's happening anymore. Why is everyone fighting? The metal wings of 3 raptors cut through the night. Takazaki stuck to the glass wall of a higher floor on the school building and looked up at the helicopters without any identification signs. Her eyes were as devoid of emotion as glass. Those were the very same units that the Crowns used to fight sliders. The fact that they would now be used against the Academy made her feel nothing.
玉尾、そこにいるんですね。
Was it instinct? Or was it because of her now augmented halo? Regardless, she sensed the presence of her fellow Crown among the choppers coming towards here. Saku should be waking up soon. Normally King Lear 3's offensive defense would prevent all halo influence, but Eru now had a superior power that could break through it. That was why, considering her programming, several decisions of hers were strange. She'd broken the shell Saku had locked herself in, and was now standing right here. Normally Eru would have been right there with Saku the moment she woke up. There was no need for her to focus on protecting the Academy. Yet why did she?
ヤンキーめ、クラウンの分際でなんて言いませんよ。エルは人形。怒りも悔しさもあるわけはないんだから。セット。
Shaking off the discomforting discomposure, Eru faced the raptors.
If wish type a midsummer night's dream.
Then she spoke a word to the birds that should have never been able to hear her.
愛してあげます。
What happened next was nothing but abnormal.
愛だ愛だ俺たちは愛し合うべきなんだ
Shop on the right, the one closest to the academy, underwent a change. The boarding hatches opened up and guns were stuck through them, which then began firing at the other 2 helicopters.
撃ってきやがった。エルに落とされやがったか。 ここまで始末が悪くなってやがんのかよ。
Tamo and Narita were on the third chopper watching what was happening from behind. Tamo couldn't help but click her tongue at Eru's aggressiveness and troublesomeness. Eru's Elu had control of the concept of love. People on the first chopper from the pilot to the assault troops were captured by Eru and became knights fighting to protect love, in this case Eru herself. It was fortunate there was a police helicopter and thus didn't have much firepower, otherwise the damage would have already been irreversible. It was understandable why Eru Takazaki stood to defend this place by herself. It was a cancer cell that could bring down entire armies by herself. She alone turned the academy into an impregnable fortress.
私はここで途中下車しよう。
Strong winds entered the chopper the moment Narita opened the hatch. While the other choppers chased this one, he prepared to get off on the school's building's roof.
飛び降りるってのか？てめえの頭の悪さも大概だな。
上空は L の支配権だ。とどまったところで同士討ち、夜店時のへたどり着くにはどの道突破しなければ。ならば必要なことをするだけだ。
That was always how Shinji Narita operated. He went towards the destined horizon, never stopping for a second. And that was why he jumped. He flew into the night sky, holding a deployment wire in his right hand. With no parachute, he jumped out of a chopper flying at over 100 kilometers per hour. The speed of the fall was such that his leather gloves suffered due to the friction. When close to the rooftops, he let go, and upon falling, he rolled, distributing the impact that would have killed anyone else 3 times over. With beast-like movements, he stood up and sharpened his senses. All of this happened in but a moment. Once he realized that no one was here, he rushed to the staircase leading inside. The dark school building was as silent as Tartarus itself. Tokino Yomise was likely the well-guarded underground facility. Examining the surroundings for the presence of people, I carefully made my way forward. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but the academy outside the building was in a terrible state. The fallen helicopter was burning, there were explosion-like sounds and vibrations coming from all around. The building that had caught fire was now a giant torch lighting red the smoke rising into the night sky.
悪道無法にはふさわしい地獄絵図。この紅蓮の花を、夜店時の、お前の野望の墓標としよう。
私たちの業界では、それは死亡フラグというのです。
Not hiding her light footsteps at all, someone came upon this night stage.
出迎え痛み入ると言うべきかな。
Her bright hair swayed, creating a contrast against the red-tinted sky outside. Eru Takazaki, the final rampart protecting the
やっ
academy.
ぱお前は最悪でしたね、成田真理。お台所の G と同じで、最初に甘い顔したのが失敗でした。臭い匂いと害虫は元から立たないとダメです。まあ、この場で終わりですけどね。なぜなら、あなたはどこにも行けない。あなたの行き場はどこにもない。
The chopper above retreated to make distance from Eru, but would that be enough? Would I actually be able to buy time as I wanted?
でも、どうして足止めを買って出るような真似を？時の先生が狙いなら、連中を盾に使う方が望みを果たせるでしょ？
彼らには今夜の足を務めてもらった義理がある。君たちにはクラスメイトとしての借りがある。己を通すためであろうと、私は君たちを偽ったのだ。ならば、最後までこの手で相手をするのが筋だろう。
相変わらず身勝手な理屈でよく喋るわからんちんです。一つ思い違いを訂正しておきましょう。
Eru took a step forward. With that, she began overtaking the mindscape with the power that rewrote wills. My legs were as immobile as roots. My consciousness was intact, but her influence was already affecting my control of my body. Couldn't even back away.
成田じゃ勝てませんよ。だって、成田がしたいのは復讐なんでしょ？それって、愛していたということじゃないんですか？
Yeah, and he was about to shoot at something literally last night. I cherished my love, but my love was taken from me by the cold reality. This truth brought out immense rage and anger and hatred. Fate was just the other side of love. Then Eruzelo had immense power over someone who was full of hatred.
そんなものが、エルに勝てるわけはないでしょ。
So he just like fucking holds a gun up to her forehead. This is very unexpected. My mind was being overwhelmed. She wasn't influencing, she was overtaking it. In terms of compatibility, she was worse than soccer for me. As long as Shinri Narita was himself, he was powerless against Iru.
死んでください。
承知した。
The casual whisper controlled my nerves and muscles. I smoothly took the gun out of my holster on my waist behind me and put it against my jaw. A moment later, a gunshot.
目を離している隙に持ち芸が増えたんですか？手品師に転職するといいです。
I was ahead of her at first, but now I was breathing raggedly behind her. During the time after the fire, before it reached my skin, I slowed down time and escaped the suicide. My speed was such that Iru couldn't see me. However, the situation didn't change at all. It was even worse, in fact. My right hand wanted to try killing me again for the sake of this girl I loved. Only my left hand was desperately keeping it from doing so.
まさかここまでの支配力とは。上空のヘリも3機まとめて叩き落とせただろうに。随分と優しいのだね、エル。
そうですね。ここは悪役らしく、逃げる虫けらがどこまであがけるか試してみるということで。
似合わない真似はやめとけよ。
Faster than Iru could turn around, the fingers that were silently swung down cut a bunch of her silver hair. Iru took distance with surprising agility for her. In her place, that was...
どういう風の吹き回しかね。私を助ける義理はないと思ったが。
Tamo, she looked at me with a cynical scowl that didn't suit her. Tamo had stood in between Narita and Iru. She stood there in this dark, burning, exploding academy as casually as one would walk around their own hometown. In their own home.
どういう風の吹き回しかね。私を助ける義理はないと思ったが。
助けた？この後に及んでとんだギャグだな。お前が言ったんだろ？目的を果たすにはこいつを何とかしなくちゃいけない。
Moving her bangs to the side as though annoyed, she faced the enemy. She could call it that anyway. Though Tamao Akahito was hiding her true identity, Edo Takazaki was someone they spent years together as members of the academy.
それはそれとして、飼い犬にだって手綱を切って闇雲に走り出したくなる夜があるのさ。どっかのバカが映ったのかもな。こいつは俺の獲物だ。お前にはやらせない。邪魔をするならぶちのめすぜ。
The will in charge of Narita's right half, Eru's halo, had vanished.
わかったとも。ここは玉緒の舞台。早くは早々に退散するとしよう。
Checking the movements of his right hand to confirm it was his again, she denied to realize he was interrupting something special and excused himself. Instead of watching how it played out, he made an exaggerated bow and ran off into the darkness.
ったく、最後まで大げさな野郎だ。
玉緒。
With the nuisance gone, Eru called out to her old friend.
エル、知ってるか？ただいま絶賛世界の危機らしいぜ。
ちょい古深夜アニメの見過ぎですね。今時ラノベでも世界の危機なんてザラにはないですよ。
ま、その手の派手な舞台は俺の持ち場じゃない。見せ場はバカに譲って、俺はバカのわがままを通してやるのさ。あいつが戻ってきた時、貸し借りなしにできるようにな。
はい。クラウン一番の小物が最終決戦に乗じて3番目の L を謀殺してのし上がろうと言うんですね。
ちょっと待て！そんなことは言ってないし、俺は一番の小物じゃない！
野心家の四天王4番目とか、定番すぎて開いた口が塞がりません。狙うにしても、1番や2番は怖いからまず3番目とか、超耳ちくてブーザマ。
てめえ、話を聞けよ！だいたい、クラウンは4人じゃなくて5人だろ？
惑わされおって、この完璧失格者が。愛で動く宇宙戦艦のように無敵の L が、クラウン10の掟にのっとって裏切り者にしよう！
そんな掟、どこにもなかったろ！
As Eru stood there, calm, Tamo charged towards her. Just fucking rams to their gate like... We've arrived at your destination. I probably should actually read that. Hisha drove a van through the closed gate. Both the sky and earth were already burning red. It was no doubt in a state of emergency.
とっくにパーリータイムのようです。ハイカブリ姫としてはいかがなさりますか？
気は長い方じゃないの。王子様のところまで最短距離で。
では、一直線に参ります。
Hisha intensely moved the handle, bearing the sentry gun attacks with the van's reinforced frame. She headed straight to the entrance of the hallway leading to the inner garden. The tires gave in under the gun of fire, causing the vehicle to slip and fall on its side, but as it did, it went right into the building. Rudy casually tore out the door to the passenger side and casually stepped out of the vehicle.
ちょっと乱暴すぎない？
派手なのは成田様の仕込みですので。それでは瑠璃様、ヒシアには行くべきところがありますので、あとはお好きに。
Hisha used her free hand to give Rudy a perfect bow while holding a bunch of armaments so dense that it looked like a metal hedgehog.
お兄様のところね。
手間のかかるご主人様です。ヒシアがいないと飛行機に乗るのも一苦労ですので。
私は先に用事を済ませてから行くわ。お兄様によろしくと伝えておいて。それからここまで運んでくれてありがとう。
She's learning not to be an absolute bitch. Wow.
おやおや、これは珍しいものをいただきました。
そうだわ。一番近い海はどっちかしら。
Rudy asked as though she just remembered something.
海ですか？ここは奥島です。最寄りは東に5キロも行けば。海へ行きたいのですか？
いいえ、ちっとも。まあ、見たことないからちょっぴりは。別に気にも留めてないけれど。
Looking away like she didn't care, she threw a glance at what she thought was east.
ほう、素直でないあたりが嫌というほど呪われた血のつながりを感じさせて。いえ、それでは瑠璃様、ご縁がありましたらまた。
Rudy casually walked into the hallway ahead, paying no heed to the maid running off with the weapons on her.
まずは夜店時の。
Her chest ached. She didn't know if this was proper pain. Even so, Rudy Mikado knew nothing but to move ahead.
帝瑠璃は唯一の新作。そう。
The outside noise became distant, making the empty halls become as silent as riplets. The lights were out, and only the moonlight leaking in could lead her, but there was no problem for her. In the darkness ahead, her fan was closed.
お前。
The side profile of the person who closed her fan was, in a way, more familiar to Rudy than her own brother. It was the fake that she used for her pleasure while she was locked away, while she was locked up. To her, this was the closest person in the academy. The fake created using machines created from Rudy. Her name was Sako Tanashi. Sako whispered something that Rudy didn't catch. And honestly, she didn't care what she said, even if it was resentment or complaints made vocal. Rudy was only irritated she was standing in her way.
そう。使われたのが腹立たしいのね。復讐戦。いいわ。むしゃくしゃしていたところなのよ。The weight of this time.
Blue lightning spread out before Ruri could finish. With Sakura in the center, the pale electric flowers filled the hallway. I feel like she's being controlled by Mitri right now.
あんたには山ほど借りがある。今から全部残らずのしつけて返す。
All of them carried the power of small lightning, yet they couldn't reach Ruri.
復讐だ。借りを返すだと。どいつもこいつも。大義といい、お兄様といい、お前といい。
Her nerves were touched, and she stood up, irritated. She felt an explosive urge towards this hopeless fake. There was no one who would teach her what it was. The thing that she believed was it turned out to be completely different, so not even she could understand the nature of the heat driving her.
言っておくけど、私が戦う理由は復讐でも報復でもないわ。
Sakura instantly cut down Ruri's frustration.
私はインシグニア、クラウンの筆頭。その責任を、なすべきことをなす。ルリ、あんたはこの先には行かせない。解体してやるわ。ああ、そう。大きければいいってものじゃないって思い知らせてあげる。
So what the fuck happened to Mitri then? The moment I entered the school building, I was instantly attacked. Oh hi, lovely. The bow was out, but the extremely strict security system was still active. Gunfire danced, cannons sang, 12.7mm machine guns were far beyond carried weapons. They could turn even ferro-concrete walls and pillars into piles of rubble in but a few seconds.
ハイカラな護衛を雇っているものだ。
Two automatons were with sharp, shark-like heads and mechanical spider-like silhouettes appeared from the shadow of a pillar. The sound of the destruction made it seem like the atmosphere was being patted with a hammer. A single bullet hole was opened in the mechanical beast, now immobile. The anti-material rifle shot made the automaton power down. A few seconds later, the others suffered the same fate.
君にしては憎い登場だな。
完璧なメイドは己の出番というものを心得ているものですので。
Lovely. Hisha came up the stairs, anti-material rifle in hand, before giving another of her perfect bows. I hadn't expected her to come here. More like it seemed that something unplanned had happened. There was something I had to do before confirming them.
夜店時の聞こえているだろ
う。こういった形で再会するとは思わなかったぞ。成田真理。
Through the still online remains of the automaton, I heard the voice of my enemy.
何を考えている魔女。人類に新たな光を与えると豪語したお前たちの実験は、よって立つ世界を終わらせようとしている。いや、今から行くぞ。そう、この国風に言うのであれば、首を洗っているがいい。
帝の復讐か。人間らしいが、何者も生み出さない愚かな行為だ。憎悪を捨てられぬ弱さが、合衆を切り捨てられぬ堅くなさが。あまたの戦場を歩いてきたというお前は、幾度となくその愚かさを見てきたのだろう。どうしてそんな愚行を。
それが人間だからだ。お前たちを許せないという怒り、銃口を向けるぞ。それを愚かと涙する知恵も、許そうとする慈悲も、すべてお前たちが愚かさと呼ぶ反問こそ命の姿だ。ただ美しいだけの形を人間と呼べはしない。だからこそ私の怒りはお前たちを、システムのすべてを否定する。
それを愚かと知りながら挑むのか。お前こそ人間の醜さそのものだ。
お前たちは怯えただけだ。世界の醜さに、そのあり方に。夜店時の、私は怒りを恐れない。憎しみを恐れない。それを超えることを恐れない。 だから私はここへ来たのだ。
私を殺して実験を、この意志を止めようというのか？
実験は止めるが、今の私にとってお前の命はついでだよ。私は兄として最後になしてやるべきことをなす。お前と話すのはおそらく最後になるだろう。だから正直に言おう。何もかも奪い、踏みにじって恥じることがない。お前の言う通り、世界の無慈悲を、人の愚かさを、私は数えきれないほど目にしてきた。夜店時の、お前の怒りは理解できる。それでも策がいた。争いの中で敵たる私に手を伸ばそうとした。空子がいた。自分の命を懸けてこの愚かな男を先へ行かせてくれた。ミトリが、玉緒が、エルがいた。彼女らと同じように輝けるものを抱いた者たちと世界中で出会えた。見ず知らずの老人を救おうと銃口に立ち向かった少年がいた。虐殺の中、敵の子供を床下に隠して守ろうとした老婦人がいた。妻を殺されながら敵を許そうとした男がいた。彼らのある者は死んだ。ある者は敗れてうずくまった。傷つき生き延びた。それが一握りだろうと、悲劇に、無道に、偽りに、この世界の理不尽に飲まれても、人間であることをやめず声を上げた勇気ある彼らがいる。この世界を救う理由としてはそれで十分すぎる。システムよ、お前たちは今私の敵になった。
どこまでも暗愚だ。しかし遅かったな。
Narita ran up the window to showing, ran up to the window showing the garden, not because Token told him to, but because he felt the powerful shockwave coming from there. Two stars were running on the surface, like meteorites and lightning strikes. They easily flew faster than hundreds of kilometers per hour. Spreading flowers of destruction all around, they tore a straight line on the surface, once clashing with destruction-giving human form.
あれはルリ、サクと戦っているのか。
The school building was burning and melting. The ground had craters all over it. The remains of roses created a blood-like rain, and the shockwaves reached even this building, which was hundreds of meters
人
away.
類という装置の次世代機 HMI の頂なりしリア王同士、現存する2つの衝突だ。空前にして絶後かもしれない最高の出し物だろう。
貴様の企てか、夜店時の。この後に及んで悪辣な魔女め。
心外だな。策は自分から打って出た。あの子はそういう子だ。愛する母校と同胞を守るため。そして
Her tone was full of love for true love for her student. Sako Tanashi was as I knew her, then Tokino was right. This was exactly what she would do. What I could see, Sako and Ruri were opposed in many ways, including appearance, impression, nature, thought patterns, and means of fighting. Sako was creating various vast energies while moving around at lightning fast speed. She was akin to a moving solar furnace. Natural phenomena like fire and wind, physical effects like light and electromagnetism, and even concepts that strayed from known laws like physical enhancement or momentum control. Knew the nature of Sako's halo from our last meeting in the heart of the underground facility thanks to both our clash and the memory sharing. Sako could not only retrieve the halo of other HMIs and use them as hers, but also create new powers based on the information she acquired. All-powerful, that was the best term for her halo. Sako Tanashi's King Layer 3 had the power of creation.
時の先生のデータでも大概化け物だと思ったけど、ここまで来ると化け物の方が可愛げあるわね。
ここに閉じ込められていた7年で夜店と木野たちが一体何をしたと思う？どんな実験で私を試したのか。
How many times had this happened now? Sako showered Rudy in flames that could vaporize tanks, which came out of them completely unscathed. Even the white dress remained unstained.
私に好きに使われていたのが許せないのね。虫けらを殺して回ったのが我慢できないのでしょ。踊り狂う道化は好きよ。今夜の気分は最悪だから、憂さ晴らしに潰してあげる。
貴様らしくない失策だな、魔女。勝負は見えている。策には瑠璃を倒す手段がない。
スクールの最強を侮るなよ。復讐者リア王1の凌駕は帝瑠璃の認識に左右される。炎を凌駕しても全ての炎への耐性を持つとは限らない。要はあれが同一の現象と認識できなければいいのさ。
That was the reason why Sokka was still standing. She was sneaking past the eyes of transcendence by changing the sources, precisions, uses, wavelengths, and colors of the phenomena. However, that was easier said than done. This surely required immense amounts of precision and processing power. Even trying to do what Sokka was insane. Even trying to do what Sokka was insane.
成田様、白い方が勝つ。このまま音無様が繕えなくなった雑巾みたいにケチョンケチョンにやられるのを黙って見ておられるのですか？
これは策が自分で越えなければならないと決断した戦いだ。今や敵である成田真理には手を貸す義理も貸してよい道理もない。
侮るなと言ったぞ。音無策は到達した。
どういう意味だ？策はクラウン唯一のリア王、最初からスペリオルを持つ HMI のはず。
限界とは更新されるものだ。これまで限界と信じていたものを乗り越えることを成長と呼ぶ。
この力が成長か。世界を終わらせかけてまで。
時代の先頭を走る者に危険はつきものだ。初めて海原へこぎ出した者はきっと無謀な冒険者だったろう。
それだけの力をもってしても人は争うのだな。
Looking down, I saw Sokka and Ruri still clashing in their deadly battle.
成と真理の言葉とは思えないな。人間の欲望には際限がない。無限の願いを叶えるには無限のリソースがいる。だからこその実験、だからこそのリア王。お前も次世代の頂点なりし HMI の持つハロー、人類の希望にリア王。大文豪があらゆる悲劇を束ねて書き切った大作の名を冠されている理由を知るまい。たどり着く先ではない。それが打ち破るべきものの名なのだ。
なんだと？
世界の悲劇を超えるありえざる力がリア王。すでにあるものを制御し再現するだけの万能では遠く及ばない。さあ、目を凝らせ。あれが真の創造だ。
成田様。
Though warping her tiny mouth in laughter, Ruri was clearly irritated. She was obviously above Sokka. She wasn't able to finish her off. Sokka hounded her, but Ruri could do nothing. The instinct and focus coming from her natural talent and pride just weren't enough to do this. But in simpler terms, she wasn't at her best.
口ばかり達者な姿はお兄様そっくりね。芸が終わりなら幕にするわよ。
Those words were more like a bluff than a challenge. In return, she received a direct glare that she didn't expect.
この程度が何だっていうの。勝ち目のない性能さ。逃げ場のない窮地がどうしたの？及ばないなんて、届かないなんて、いつものことよ。
Indeed, Sokka Tanashi had faced the worst despair. Deep in her memory, there was a deep wound. Back when she was a powerless girl, she faced a slider who killed her friend. The difference between humans and HMIs was as fundamental as that between lions and rabbits. The rabbit would be targeted, chased, face death, fear them cry, and yet...
だから戦えるわよ。 とあんたのバカ兄貴もそうだったんでしょ。どうしてここでお兄様の名前が出てくるの。緩んだ脳で横連舞でもしているのかしら。どうして私が。ふざけないでよ。最初に名前を出したのはあんたの方でしょ。あんたを潰した後であの大バカ野郎にも一発思い知らせてやらなくちゃいけないってだけよ。お前が先に潰れてしまえ、醜いハエのように。
With fiery anger, she shook off the confusion in her chest. She kicked off the ground, creating a crater. She wouldn't know peace until she completely crushed this conceited woman and her stupid ideas. She easily broke through heat that could turn her into vapor and approached Sokka before swinging down his sonic fist, charged with hate. It was the same failure she'd done 2 days ago back at the church, as well as the moment Sakura Tanashi was waiting for. Shouted that while watching Rudy and Sakura clash from afar. She instantly used her automatic rifle. The reinforced glass window was shattered. The wind carrying the smell of burning came in, turning my hair into a mess. I underestimated her. Sakura actually had a means of defeating the monster that grew every single moment. Sakura only challenged Rudy head-on and prolonged this battle because she was waiting for a chance to use this ace up her sleeve, which would be enough to defeat Rudy even if it would be taxing in terms of processing power. I couldn't tolerate that. Even if it was Sakura, I wouldn't let anyone else have Rudy's life.
Sit! The weight of the oldest house type, King Lear 3.
I was using that one again. Rudy screamed for the first time since the battle began. That moment Rudy saw flowers, not one or two. Countless flowers were blooming, turning this place of ruins into a dreamlike garden. She jumped back in a hopelessly pathetic manner. She was merely following her instincts, which were so sharp that you could mistake them for foresight. But even so, she was too slow. Her appearance didn't change, but Rudy's right arm was almost completely reset. It lost its power, speed, and toughness, making it into a normal girl's arm. This filled her with fiery rage. This was King Lear 3's true power. Halo creation was but an extra. It was actually able to dismantle and create the human microcosm from its smallest parts.
奪ってきたのはあんたでしょ、ミカドルリ。その罪を見ろ。
Whoops. Her hair dancing, Sakura faced the intense rage head on. She kept her distance until now. Now the roles were reversed. Like a fighter on the stage, she stood before Rudy, devoid of any trickery. There was a fantastical garden spread out around Sakura. It looked like an eternal paradise, but to Rudy Mikado it was nothing but hell. Roaring like an injured beast, she backed away because it was the optimal thing to do. Sakura's King Lear 3 didn't just make halos, it was also capable of turning Rudy into a normal human. It didn't allow King Lear 3 1 to surpass anything, making it its greatest enemy. However, if she was unable to avoid being fully recreated, Rudy should be able to surpass it eventually. Rudy understood the meaning of what she just said, making her forget that she was mid-battle and stood in place in astonishment. She tried to run away out of fear. She tried to back away for a moment because she couldn't win. She was doing the same thing as that woman who could do nothing but live under the protection of the man who took everything away from her. It was all because of the moment when, after her defeat at the hands of her brother, she was saved by that foolish man. Back then, instead of marching on forward and wishing for her death, she was slightly glad that she was saved and survived. And that was her greatest defeat. It was unforgivable, it was shameful, and yet the one at fault was no longer with them. She knew the taste of defeat and shame, making her feel something. For her brother, or for Tagi. Not even she knew. The unbearable pain that she thought was gone came back, making her despair and say,
遠くまで。
Were her wings cut? Was she in the mud? Was she made to kneel? The answer to those questions was a resounding no.
Sit!
Wearing the irremovable brand of defeat, she roared. This woman she was facing, she was a fake made from her. An imitation could never shine brighter than the real thing. That was why Rudy accepted her defeat. Losing to her brother filled her with chagrin, but as she was, she couldn't win against his fate. Surpassing alone wasn't enough to surpass this enemy.
Where is Cordelia?
An enemy. That was what Sokka was. She had to be defeated, and she could in turn be defeated herself. That was the meaning of the word enemy.
King Leo 1.
And this encounter was someone she considered an enemy made. And this encounter with someone she considered an enemy made Rudy come to an answer she wouldn't be able to come to before. Surpass. Surpass, surpass, surpass. If he couldn't withstand, surpass.
私は超える。お前を、お兄様を、何もかも。
She launched a bare right-hand attack. Slender hand that was powerless compared to what it was now tearing apart the illusory garden.
これはリア王3が消える、消される。一体何を。
Sokka couldn't understand what was happening. Whoops. The garden surrounding Rudy's right hand was disappearing, bringing back the ruins of reality. The power that could rewrite her was also waning. Like Sokka with her King Lear 3, she didn't analyze and dismantle it. It was more apt to say that Rudy was tearing apart the very concept of Sokka's halo. This incomprehensible phenomenon came at a cost. A flower of blood bloomed. Rudy was bleeding from her lungs with a ghastly smile on her face. It was no ordinary internal wound. She was basically destroying herself.
心臓が、骨が、何もかも痛くて死んでしまうわ。たった今まで夢でも見ていた気が、世界はこんなに痛くて、涙が出るくらい素敵だわ。
Rudy's King Lear 1 would surpass even the deepest wounds. It was impossible for her body to be hurt, but using this new ability was too taxing in processing power that not even she could keep up. That was what made Rudy Mikado's ace up the sleeve. That was what made this Rudy Mikado's ace up the sleeve. Just like Saku, the hardship trial and the existence of a strong enemy brought Rudy a greater height than ever before.
なんて苦しい。身も心も焦がす敗北という泥の味。ああ、こんなにも愛おしい。これが私を強くしてくれる。私は二度と負けない。お前をぶちのめしてお兄様を倒す。
Stopped by Rudy's right hand, Saku's halo could no longer reach her.
なんなのそれ。どういう冗談。土壇場で新しい力。いい気になってるんじゃないわよ。
Saku felt that touching Rudy's right hand, which dispersed even halos, would be her end. Despite that, she didn't back away. The palm was fatal, but due to the reset, the arm only had the physical strength of a normal human. There was an extreme imbalance in Rudy's body, causing her to lose precision. Regardless, Saku rushed towards them.
私が一人で立っていると思うな。
Fearing meant death, hesitation meant death. Feeling the touch of the Reaper, she rushed to his enemy, and, if only barely, evaded her swipe attack. At the same time, she twisted her body and launched a kick. It was an all-out attack from an enhanced body. Rudy took it head-on, sending her flying over the ground like a pebble skipping on the water, before she crashed into the remains of a school building. Sending the rubble away, Rudy slowly stood up. The immortal King Lear 1, that would normally feel nothing, was tilting as though heavily damaged. The ghastly smile like a crescent moon was that of a demon rather than an angel.
今度はお腹やってくれたわね。離れたところからだと消されてしまうから、接触した瞬間にハローで作り変えたのか。
ニトリは私を信じてくれた。だからこの手であんたがやってきたことの償いをさせてやる。
But frankly, Mitri seemed more insane near the end. Both were completely silent as they looked at each other. They didn't need words to know that the next attack would end it. Sakutanashi couldn't tolerate Ruri for using her body to massacre many of her fellow HMIs just for fun. Ruri Mikado simply couldn't tolerate Saku for sullying her and standing here before her.
あんたみたいなバカにつける薬はないってのよ。
Saku ran with speed that made it seem like she was flying.
そんなもの欲しがっていないわよ。
Ruri ran, speeding faster than a bullet, piercing through everything in her way. Their attacks reached each other's weak spots. Her chest was pierced, carrying the conception of transcendence. Ruri's right hand simply couldn't be stopped as it pierced through Saku like she was paper. Ruri, who was held in the academy and who had made to surpass countless experiments, turned out to be stronger than Saku even with the bodily enhancements. Therefore, what decided with this outcome was the absurdly simple difference in pure body ability. Simple, but definite. Ruri had been running as she slept for 7 years, and Saku was unable to reach her even at this critical moment. This blink of an eye passed by. Time flowed like cold mud, making her sense that death was near. As it approached, there was only one question in her mind. Why am I not feeling any pain?
そんな趣のないエンディングでは拍手の一つももらえまい。おとなしさく
Crash the fucking party! She opened her eyes to see the back of a man who shouldn't be there. Holding Rudi's right hand, Shinri Narita had arrived in a split second and dispersed the vision of her death. The moment I made my move was iffy, but I made it in time. I used my left hand to swing away Asaku's arm, and my right to twist Ruri's and use her own speed to throw her. She crashed into the surface with speed that would kill a normal person at least 3 times, yet didn't even buy time against Ruri.
女子会の邪魔をするなんてつくづく無粋なお兄様。
Just as expected, she recovered instantly. This was my second time facing this bomb with a lit fuse, or 3 if you included the encounter at the heart of the underground facility. Phantom pain came from the lazuli on my chest. Looking at my little sister made me feel that something was off.
よその女は受け止めて実の妹の首は折る。不出来な兄もここに極まれる。でも出てきてくれたのはちょうどいいわ。私お兄様を倒したくて追いかけてきたの。
お前は本当に瑠璃なのか。
ミカドルリ以外の何に見えるというの。どこからでも気の済むまで好きなだけ。
Ruri Mikado was different. She was nothing like the empty husk that she was when I last saw her 7 years ago, or the infallible angel she was after the reunion.
いつの間にスクールへとは言わん。もとより私はお前を殺すためにここへ来たんだ。
Covering Saku, who had yet to recover from the shock of almost dying, I faced the tempest-like bloodlust coming from
お
Ruri.
兄様、今は私を殺せないのでしょ。実験とやらを止めてオールとの接続を断たないと。尊大、わがまま、ユイが独尊が心情のくせに。随分とお優しいこと。
Indeed, I couldn't defeat Ruri at this moment. First and foremost, it was best for me to take Sakura and run, but now that I had faced her, she wouldn't let me go that
で
easily.
も勝者と敗者ですもの。
Those words shocked me like nothing else. Ruri, who hated defeat more than anything, admitted that she was defeated. I just couldn't believe that. At that moment, Ruri dashed, slowed down time, making my perceived world almost grind to a halt. I evaded Ruri's right hand as she thrust it at me and grabbed her wrist once more. Once I touched her, the difference in our speeds vanished. That moment I felt like I was caught in a vortex.
この技は
Using the point I was grabbing as a fulcrum, she threw me. This was no doubt the technique I'd used against her to cause her to destroy herself. I lost my footing and my world was flipped upside down as I was flung into the air. Couldn't even brace or retaliate. The precision and skill in this move surpassed even the originals. This wasn't an infallible angel or fairy. There was no room for doubt anymore. It wasn't even an issue that she stole my technique. The deciding factor was the very fact that she relied on something other than her brute strength. Mid-air, I let go of her hand, cutting the contact and restoring the time difference. Other than the slow time and a moment shorter than a blink of an eye, I said,
そうかこれがお前の戦いか
Rudy's right hand approached me in slow motion. I had no means of avoiding it in mid-air, but I wasn't afraid. The blade, too tough, was very frail. It could be broken with ease. The dreaming Peter Pan was strongest because he was clueless. One day, reality would catch up to him. It was a golden wound that was unavoidable exactly because she was infallible. Rudy Miku had come to know defeat, filling up the greatest flaw that she needed to become complete.
お前はそこに一人ではいないのだな
As a winner, she came to know defeat. Her wings were broken, yet she still flew. The girl went up the steps, alone, yet not at the same time. Soul meant for flight and a prayer to look upward created a proud but sad forefront of humanity.
さよなら、お兄様。
This time, without flaw, Rudy's right hand touched Shinri Narita's chest.
見事お前の勝ちだ
Witnessing the final authentic masterpiece, I accepted the end of my 7-year journey. Who saves his ass? Saku? That's Saku. Saku forgot that Rudy was here and tried to run up to him, but she forced herself to stop when her HMI senses felt something even greater than Rudy.
これは何か来る。
Sup, owl! She glared, not at the enemy she defeated, but something far below. It began to move. Like a clockwork watch, a mechanism that's been there from the start began to move. Kushima alone had a population that easily surpassed 150,000. Many of them felt something and looked up at the night sky. It was out of sync with reality, making it hard to properly perceive. Spurned by powerful uneasiness, they looked outside through the open windows to see only a familiar sky. They had forced themselves to believe that it was nothing. Oh, hi! Only those with the right aptitude could see it, and HMIs were among them. Something far larger than the world flowed out from the ground and stood tall. To say it was large would be an understatement. Let me just take a screenshot again. Fucking Albion is about to go down again. Where are his 4 jellymen? It was 57 meters tall. The way it stood between the mountains made it look like a true giant. So the mechanism known as the world shape was a transient thing. It was merely reflecting the appearance of the apex, the creature that reached a new level of complication by evolving the forefront and achieving the greatest possible prosperity. Waves of power spread across the sky, and thousands of people all over Okushima began fainting for no apparent reason. In many other places, countless people were looking up the sky and praying like the most pious of lambs. Whether it was early morning, noon, twilight, or late evening, towns, bedrooms, ruins, deserts, mountains, on the sea, in the sky, in orbit, on battlefields and dreams, young or old men and women of all races, things of all kinds, looked up in a single direction. Some were fearful of this great being, some were infuriated by this absurd end, some were simply praying. The giant of light was both overwhelming and majestic at the same time, was a defensive mechanism, and as such, quickly took to doing what it had to. Like ripples, footsteps of destruction suddenly spread all across the world. Tokino Yomisa was in the underground facility watching this result of the experiment through a monitor. Her expression seemed to be a mix of resignation and anger.
険は承知だった。万全を図った。未知に挑むことこそ人間のあるべき姿だ。
They should have wanted all, uncover all, and never stop moving forward. If human nature was something intolerable, then mankind as a whole was a failure that should have never existed. Tokino couldn't see the giant of light. The many observation units she had were showing nothing but a vast emptiness. The goal of the contact experiment was to carve open and establish a path between the owl and this physical dimension. It was scarcely different from what the fearless explorers did during the Age of Discovery. From the observed data, Tokino drew a certain conclusion. She realized that the use of pure halos of multiple types during an intense situation involving multiple powerful HMIs, like a fight to the death, would open a path to the owl. That was why she'd led Saku in the duty to fight each other, and Narita's involvement was actually something she wanted.
触れてはならぬものがあるとでも言うのか。ならば人間はどうして知恵を手にした？
Shelter was collapsing. The intense wave coming from below the academy made the entire underground facility collapse. In the final moment, someone called her. The line was still active.
最後の話し相手が貴様か。私もつくづく月のない。この不完全な世界に人類の未来に輝きをもたらそうとした。進みすぎたがゆえの破滅でもまどろみの中の観測でもない道を探すことが、私はここまで。託す相手が貴様とは最後まで吐き気がするな。
The vast volume of the underground structure collapsed, turning the place back into the fissure it once was. Despite the intense destruction going on all around, the Academy students were still within its grounds. That was why they were able to see it from up close. It happened while Tamao and Eru were still fighting.
ダメだな、これ。
Tamao was a machine. She knew her specs better than anyone else, and she instantly knew that she stood no chance. Fighting against this was hopeless. That thing that slowly stood up from what was once the plant was far taller than the school building and the research facility. Seeing it made her grin wryly. It was so large that it was hard to process that it had a humanoid form.
なんですか？あれは伝説の巨人？まさか完成してたなんて。
敵の俺が言うのもなんだけど、やばい時にいい加減なデタラメ吹く癖直した方がいいぞ。
どうやら自分たちが戦っている状況ではないようです。
Eru canceled her halo and stuck out her right hand. The situation was still uncertain, and Tamao put on a wry grin like the one before.
マジ切れだったくせに頭は冷えてるな。そういうことなら一時休戦で他にできることでも。
The moment she took the hand for a shake.
ほら
Eru reactivated her halo, hindering Tamo's movements. Before she knew it, Tamo was laying bare on the ground and Eru was sitting on her chest.
この体勢はマウントポジションといい、とある柔術家が日本に持ち込んだのですが、上から相手をコントロールすることで反撃を封殺することに特化しています。
お前語ったな。
もちの論ですが、それはそれ、これはこれ。派手な舞台はふさわしい役者に。Lの持ち場はここ。強大な敵の出現ごときで裏切り者とお涙頂戴な展開をするとでも。
Eru, you're a fucking idiot! That's the fucking end of the world happening there! I don't care if it's like traitor bullshit. You're all gonna fucking die if that is fucking stopped. Get your ass off of Tamo and go help! Are you actually retarded?
最後くらいはやりたいことをしてみます。
マジか。お前がやりたいこととか言い出すなんて。
ほらー、オラオラオラオラオラオラー、裏切り者は滅ぼすべし。慈悲はない。本当にありませんからね。
この人形野郎、俺をなめんな。オラオラオラオラ。
Despite the situation, or perhaps because of it, Tamamo played along with Iru's rarely displayed preferences. While the two had their meaningless fight, the footsteps of doom continued to echo. The giant of light walked. He looked slow, but was actually surprisingly fast. Nothing stood to stop it, and it wouldn't matter if it did. The absurdly large footprints it left turned everything into bits of light that soon vanished, regardless of if it was built by humanity or the stars. The giant sang and the world, the entire planet shook. The effect was only physical. Even the foundation, what could be called the soul of reality, was being shaken, dismantled, and returned to nothing. It was a song of demise without pain or cruelty. Touching it was akin to waking up from a dream. It was the trumpet sound of the end, promised to reach all that had life. But this demise was unavoidable. Someone stood to defy it once more.
ああ、やっと出てきてくれたわね。
The middle of the academy, the area looked like it was carpet bombed. The multiple buildings in the garden that were standing only an hour ago were now a mountain of rubble. Compared to the ending that would be given by the giant, this destruction was cruel and ugly. The one who caused it were standing at the top of the rubble. They were standing there to face the approaching giant.
今日という日をずっと待ちわびていたの。一日先週。実に気の長い話だったけれど。
The girl, as graceful as a work of art, made her hair as beautiful as droplets of the moon dance in the wind. She was Ruri
ずっ
Mikado.
と私を見つめていたわね。殿方に見られるのは女の誉れ。けれど、相手によりけり。見るだけで声もかけてこないめめしい輩に、なびく女なんているものですか。
Ruri was always haughty and wild. The girl who prided herself as someone who had it all from the start and stopped being akin to a despot, even after she learned to defeat emotion and reason. Even as his perfect product, King Lear won. Ruri was less than a child before this giant of light. The difference between them was like the difference between a planet and a pebble. Despite what she was, she had no chance. This was a fact, yet the golden child paid that no heed. In her heart there was a haughtiness akin to that of a man who shot down the sun with an arrow.
あんたの都合はどうでもいい。でも、今あのでかいのを片付けないと、スクールどころか、地球丸ごと見せじまいなんでしょ?
With her voluptuous curves in full display, Sako Tanashi, threw her black hair back and looked at the towering giant. The insignia of the crowns, as well as King Lear III, born from elements taken from Ruri, she was akin to her child, and she was a success story that was able to reach the level of the original. Just like always, she never once enjoyed battles with killing involved. In fact, she always feared them. That meant that she was surprisingly sound mind. She acquired power that matched Golden Child's after she was born. And though she saw a lot and sullied her hands many times, Sakura didn't stray from the path or fall like many other HMIs. Basically, she was able to remain relatable no matter how much absurdity she witnessed. She was sometimes overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, yet she had a heart that could overcome it all. That was Sakura Tanashi's greatest strength, greater than any halo. And so...
出てくるはずのないものがこちらに出てきた。ならば簡単だ。追い返してやればいい。ここは貴様のような世間知らずがいる場所ではない。
So said the last one here, Shinri Narita. He faced this despair, yet remained full of pride. The clash between the three was interrupted by the appearance of the giant. The situation was likely caused by Tokuno Yumisa's experiment. It wouldn't be hard to believe that the witch arranged the battle between Sakura and Ruri, and even got Narita involved just to call this. Was this resolve towering over them something to celebrate, or an unexpected worst-case scenario? That wasn't something they cared about. Ruri Mikado was connected to the owl since birth, and the fact that something besides her existed within her disgusted her more than anything else. She would kill the owl. She didn't even think about if it was possible. She promised that to herself when she was young, and she didn't care about that anymore. This whimsical, more like haphazard girl had to focus on defeating Narita and Saku first. The best way to do that was to get rid of this giant first. For Saku Tanashi, things were simpler. Whatever the giant was, if it was a threat to the world, you would either politely ask it to leave, or send it out by force. She would deal with Ruri and Narita afterwards. As for Shinri Narita, I was even standing here alive and well. He had no way of repelling the power of Ruri's right hand. He sustained an attack he couldn't stop, even with the stillness from his halo. He should have been dead. If you ignored that question, he was the same as ever. He'd lost the revenge he used as his purpose for living. There was no clouds over his eyes. Violent fate that rid people of their lives. Lights snuffed out by abhorrent human nature. He couldn't tolerate the many tragedies of this world. That was why he stood to defy his demise. In this situation, their wills were one. They would bring down the giant. For the giant of light, their powers were but specks of sand. It wouldn't even pay any heed to them, and instead focus on the role given to it by the gears far greater than any. Hold on, let me just boop. This is a really sick CG. In the blink of an eye, the giant became large enough to cover the vision hole. Large though it was, its limbs moved at almost the speed of sound. Even when it seemed to be walking, its speed was 100 kilometers per hour.
大きな顔で私に指図なさらないでお兄様。だいたいどうしてまだ生きているのやら。ま、それもこれもあと。まずはここは私の遊び場よ。勝手ができると思わないで。さあ、ダンスを始めましょう。
Instead of just sitting around, Ruri rushed to begin the battle.
Where is Kozeri?
High above the giant slightly twisted its body. Its size made it truly enormous. The abnormality of this thing made it hard to process it with normal human perception. Its movements seemed sluggish, but it was actually moving at an amazing speed, swinging its arm to neutralize the space along with Ruri as though chasing off a fly. A moment later, the shining giant's arm became light and vanished. Though the arm seemed like a vague mass of particles, it was actually tougher than any material on Earth. Yet Ruri was able to pulverize the upper arm with a counter from her right hand. The nature of the power in Ruri's right hand was simple. It was the power to break through anything. Since anything she broke through and surpassed was deemed unnecessary, it would be disposed of. This selfish ability made it possible for her to get rid of everything she touched. The greatest destruction achieved by mankind was even able to fight against the fate of demise. This destructive power damaged not just the matter, but also the very concept of right arm. It wouldn't allow any regeneration or healing, yet the giant regained its shining arm in but a moment.
古い腕ではなく新しい腕というわけ。形という縛りなんてどうでもいいのね。つくづくでたらめ。
Like you see, I get this arm now because it's not the old arm that you deleted. It's an entirely new arm. It is a new model.
どっちがデタラメなのよ。
The sight almost made Zuck speechless. The very fact that Ruri fought the giant head on made it clear just how insane she was.
君の言いたいことはわかる。兄に似ず、かくも頭の悪い妹で済まない。
本当に兄弟だわ、あなたたち。それはともかくとして、オールを破壊しても大丈夫なの？潰したところで世界も道連れに心中とかになったら。
あれはオールそのものではなく、異物を排除する機構のようなもの、いわば端末だ。問題はないだろう。おそらく私の目的にもかなう。
まあ黙って見ててもどうせ終わりよね。それならダメだった時は笑ってごまかすしかないか。セット。 The weight of this type King Fear 3 ラン。
Sokka raised her left hand. Countless bright lights appeared, representing various physical phenomena. Thinking about it, HMIs should just be able to fight the owl, since they explained that HMIs is basically just a connection to the owl that lets them rewrite parts of the owl. So by all means, there should be ways to just deal with this giant fucking Albion. I'm gonna keep calling it Albion. Like the owl's defensive mechanism, Albion. That's what I'm gonna fucking call it now. But yeah, that should technically be just a way to deal with it by just rewriting the owl in a way so it doesn't fucking exist. Anyways. Three beams of light pierced the night. The electron spears penetrated the owl, creating holes in the shining giant, making it lose its shape and mass. Powerful as it was the target of two king lairs. While Rudy was shattering with sheer power, Sokka was dispersing it like mist.
よし、通じる。これならなんとかやれそう。こちらに引きずり出されて形を成している以上、ある程度はこっちのルールに縛られてるってことね。
Destroying it seemed possible, but that was enough to assume that they could win this. But the giant quickly regained its former shape, crushing all such hopes. There wasn't even a sign left that it was attacked.
あれだけやって何のダメージも残ってないみたい。
海から流れ込む水と同じか。力の流入自体を止めない限り、吹き飛ばしたところで再現はない。そしてこちらはいずれ力尽きる。
Would you look at that? There's just some happened to be a dude who can just stop shit. Like, you know, restoration. Just like I adore the fact that Narita's Halo in true form is literally just stop. Just stop it. Like that, in its essence, that is his power. Just cease. It's great.
根本を立たないとダメってこと？でもそんな弱点っぽいもの一体どこに？こんな時に時の先生がいてくれたら知恵を出してもらえたかもしれないのに。
Like, I remember my talks about making a subclass, making like what classes D&D character would be if you try to model them after Narita. I give up at this point. I give up. Absolutely. No, fuck that. I don't think there's any way in D&D to make it so they can just do shit like that. Like, make like a fucking 10th, like 11th, 12th level spell. Homebrew. This shit doesn't even exist anymore. Like, it used to exist, then somebody tried to become a fucking god, accidentally deleted the god of magic, and suddenly everything was fucked. In fact, I'm pretty sure like there's some theories out there for one of the patrons for the old for Great Old One. It's just like it's literally just like a screaming rock or something like that. There's a fucking And there's theories out there that screaming rock is just whatever became of Karsus after he tried to cast Karsus' avatar.
ヒナはいつか巣立つもの。先人には敬意を払わねばならないが、現在を生きる若人の役目は足跡をなぞることではなく、超えて進むことだ。
頼らずにやれってことでしょ。成田はいつも話が回りくどいのよ。それで具体案は？
手立てがあるなら早く教えなさい、お兄様。
Rudy stopped fighting it head on and came back down. She must have realized that her efforts were fruitless. The annoying insect gone, the giant resumed walking with its heavy steps.
待って、あれは。
With every step, the giant was becoming brighter. At first, it was merely a bright humanoid shape, but now it was so dazzling that it was hard to look at. I instantly understood what that meant, as its brightness grew, so that the indiscriminate destruction it afflicted upon the world.
時が経つほど危険極まりなくなるか。奥島ごと跡形もなく消し去られるまで、さほど猶予はなさそうだ。
しかし、あれの大元は判明している。システムの某女子が教えてくれた。接触実験はこの場所でなければ成立しなかった。
それはスクールができる前にあったっていう大亀裂のこと？プラントがそれを塞ぐ形で建設されたとか聞かされたことがある。
昨夜の地震、震源地は地下40キロ。間違いなくそこだ。スクールの真下、大亀裂の最深部に得意点がある。
巨人が来たのも下からだったわね。
瑠璃、巨人の足止めを頼む。合図があったら倒せ。
あら、お兄様が私にお願い事なんて、これが初めてではないかしら。
Rudy cracked a mischievous smile. The expression, reminiscent of what she was 7 years ago, made my chest ache, but I managed to hide it.
いいわ。兄弟のよしみですもの。でも、お兄様こそ失敗なさったら、一族老頭を笑い物にして差し上げる。
There's not much left to make him a fucking laughing stock for.
鏡でも眺めながら笑い転げるがいい。もっともその時にまだこの世界が残っていればだが。
地下40キロの得意点なんてどうやって手出しするつもりなの？成田が言ってる間、私と瑠璃でオールを食い止めれば。
サク、君の仕事は別にある。
Suddenly embraced her waist and pulled at me. It was so unexpected for her that she momentarily forgot the situation we were in, became flustered in more ways than one.
いや、ちょっとこんな時に、いえ、こんな時だからかもだけど、ちょっと成田、正気に帰って。
任せたぞ、瑠璃。
ええ、お兄様。
Holding on to Sakura as she yelped and began running. I ran towards the place where the giant first appeared, that being the fissure that was exposed when the plant collapsed. Just that as the CG, just yeehaw! Holding Sakura, Narita threw himself into the emptiness below with almost nothing on him. Looking like a stabbed wound, the giant fissure was akin to a hollow leading to hell. That was mere 80 meters long and 37 meters wide at most. It was a shaft that reached all the way down to 40 kilometers. Having suffered the destructive hands of the giant, the sides were smooth as butter, making it look almost artificial. They were both falling into this fissure.
どうしてあんたはいつもこんな無茶しか。
Sakura wasn't even able to finish a sentence. Even keeping her eyes open was a challenge with the wind hitting her face. The ever-increasing speed of the fall made it hard to stay sane. The sensation of gravity pulling her made it feel like her heart would burst out of her chest. Narita truly believed that they could safely arrive at the bottom 40 kilometers down with such an absurd method. He should have had his skull opened and checked for the presence of a brain. Sakura noted to do just that. Asaku noted to do just that if they made it back alive. The air pressure suddenly vanished. She fearfully opened her eyes and realized that they were floating as though gravity had vanished.
残念ながら止まってはいないよ。時間減速。我々は50倍の速度で動いている。
Basically, this was a world in slow motion where everything but they were sluggish.
これは成田のハロなの？
その先にあったものだ。万象を止める絶対の静止。変化を拒絶し、全身を否定する忌むべき呪われた力。
成田、それは。
Naita showed gloom that was unlike him, but before Saku could express her worry, she was cut off.
今は時間こそ貴重だ。瑠璃であってもそう長く巨人を足止めできまい。我々は1秒でも早く得意点へたどり着かなければならない。
たどり着かなければって40キロ先よ。まさかこのまま落ちていこうとか思ってるんじゃないわよね。
Objects falling through the atmosphere had a limit called terminal velocity, the balance between the air resistance and gravity. Even in the optimal conditions, where the fall was completely direct, getting to the bottom of this fissure would take about 600 seconds. That was enough time for the owl to eliminate Ruri and end the world.
君の力を貸してくれ。何よりも、終末よりも早く。
私たちを加速しろっていうの。
Saku's Linear 3 allowed her to accelerate the mass to about 10 meters per second. That didn't seem like much, but with time slowed down as it was, their objective speed would be over 10 times greater than that, bringing them down to this dark hell in no time. A single mistake, like a graze of the wall, would make them blow up into pieces, and there was no guarantee that this fissure even reached the bottom.
責任取りなさいよ。
任せておきたまえ。
Saku put her hands on the man holding her and clung tight. Multiple halos were activated at the same time. Okay, that is actually a slight bit better. First off, the color is really nice. Second off, they're slightly shifted up so I can put the number there better. And it's also not massive fucking spoilers! Braced by pale plasma, the two began falling at an absurd speed. They were akin to falling star that sliced the darkness apart. Saku's processing power had surpassed the limit during her battle against Ruri. She was having a hard time merely accelerating them. She couldn't even create a space for momentum control to protect them. That must have meant that the reason why they almost weren't feeling any air resistance was not in Sailor. Thrilled despite the situation, she shouted that at the idiot next to her. Back to Ruri. Back to Ruri.
まったくしつこい殿方ね。
The fight between the giant and the girl was still ongoing. A shining hand reached, covering the sky above. It was as though a mountain was falling towards her. Knowing that she couldn't escape, Ruri opted to punch it away with her right hand. It shattered the giant's hand, which restored itself in a couple of seconds. This happened so many times now that she stopped counting. Eventually, Ruri was being overwhelmed. Her movements began to lose their brilliance. She was fatigued from coming to know her powerlessness. She was actually wounded. Again, Ruri Mikado, the one with the halo of transcendent and surpassing, could overcome any and all pain and injury, making her nigh immortal. The one with the halo of transcendence and surpassing, which could look a little, was actually injured. Failing to evade the giant's earth-rending swipe, the girl was blown away. Normally Ruri would surpass attacks she suffered, making her immune to them. However, this function didn't work on the giant's attacks. Though her body didn't disappear, it hurt and took 10 times as long to recover, making even more broken bones and injury that needed time to heal. Even mere broken bones and injury that needed time to heal. King Lair 1 was actually working as normal. The problem here was merely that the giant was so far above Ruri that even surpassing its attacks wasn't enough. She couldn't leap over Mount Everest by simply jumping off the ground. The giant was like a world by itself, Passing it would likely take thousands of moons.
せっかくお兄様が頭を下げたのだもの。結果は出して差し上げないとね。
After Rudy fell, the giant launched a follow-up attack, but she deflected it and charged at it once more. As unbeatable as it seemed to be, the giant needed time to recover from her attacks. It had openings she could use, and now she was using them to approach it.
それ
Single swing took out the giant's left foot and shin. Subjected to gravity, the giant seemingly slowly, but actually quickly, began collapsing. Rudy was waiting for it at the surface, aiming for its head.
試行錯誤は人間の美点。手や足を消したところで意味がないなら、別の急所で試してみましょう。
As it collapsed, the giant began to shine bright. The faint light began to spread like the filling moon. Without sound, but natural and artificial objects began to shatter and turn into bits of light. Rudy was no exception. They dived straight down as though they were no longer falling. Oh, they're going hard now! Again. The world became like molten ink and was left behind. Repeatedly doing slight changes in direction as though threading the needle. Narita and Saku were heading to the bottom. Even Saku's vast processing power was wasn't enough for these intense calculations. Her nerves were short-circuiting and her brain was so hot it felt like it was on fire.
大切な人たちがいるの。
The faces of the people she'd met until now held her bursting consciousness together. Mitri, Soryu, Sorako, Eru, Tamo, Eru, friends that could never be replaced. Her mother, who encouraged her to go to the academy, and her father, who saw her off with tears in his eyes. Her friend, who was gone for good. There were things she had lost. She was hurt in more ways than one, and had her share of sins.
私、あの人たちが大好きよ。
She shouted as loud as she could, bearing her emotions. She didn't want to save the world. It was simply beyond. Well, that was simply beyond her. She only wanted to meet them again, hopefully with a smile on her face. Perhaps the afternoon tea parties they had together didn't suit her, but she loved them more than anything else.
だから、怖いけどこの先へ進めるわ。
私は本当は心の底であの地上の世界を憎んでいたのかもしれない。
The man who never once lost his pride rang out a heavy confession. It pierced Saku's heart.
サク、君のその輝きを忘れるな。
私の輝き。
本当のノーブルとは導くものではないと私は思う。それは夜の果てに昇る黎明、遠く瞬くかすかな光。世界とはこの闇と同じ、どこまでも続く無明そのもの。命という輝きが無人の暗闇に束の間の意匠を描き出す。だが人生とは一瞬の流星、流れて燃え尽きる本来何の意味もない幻。形あるものはついえる。全ては終わりへとひた走る。人が天を目指して築く塔は道半ばに崩れ落ちるのが宿命だ。それでも命が無意味だろうと、その歩みにはきっと価値がある。
私、本当に何かができたのかな。いつも大事なものは守り損ねてしまうのに。
胸を張りたまえ。君の手がどれほど罪深くてもためらうことなく飛べ。ノーブルとは目指すべき灯火だ。鳥に見せられた者が翼に挑む。星に心奪われた者が空を目指す。世界の正しさを一個だにしない輝ける愚か者たちの背中が後に続く誰かの夢になる。
Saku's hesitation was dispersed and she gave him a nod. Her senses HMI felt what was in the darkness ahead. It was a path leading to the core of a distant world. Singularity that was pulsing here in the underground since eternity.
あれを破壊すれば巨人を倒せるのよね。
でもどうやって？
それは
A moment later, as they still accelerated downwards, an immense shining mass fell from above. The giant was falling at an unbelievable speed. Impossible. Slowed down time. To outside observers, our speed should have been over 10 times the speed of sound. Even if the giant jumped into the fissure after us, it simply couldn't have been able to catch up with us.
ダメ！振り切れない！
ルリはどうした？巨人が我々を追いかけてきたのなら。
Falling right behind us at the same speed as us, the shining giant reached for us. Should have been experiencing 50 times more. We should have been experiencing 50 times more time than the giant, but it was as fast as before.
時間減速の影響を書き換えられているのか。どちらにせよ、あれは正真正銘の化け物だ。サク、なんとか加速しろ。捕まればひとたまりもないぞ。
これ以上の加速は。
We failed to dodge. The giant's thumb grazed Saku's body. It was as light as a feather's touch, but the mere difference in mass made her fly like a bowling pin.
Saku!
The shocks cancelled my time distortion, making the world move as it has been. Saku was blown out of my arms and ended up over 10 meters below me. She was our engine, and without her accelerating and controlling my position was nearly impossible. Falling, I was doing nothing but falling. I lost my mobility and free fell. Below there were several dozen kilometers of darkness, and above there was the giant of light shining like the moon. Trying to forcefully fix my posture, I followed Saku with my eyes. She was so conscious, but having overused her processing power, she couldn't use her halo, letting her do nothing but fall.
Nigero! Saku!
I shouted as hard as I could, knowing full well how absurd I was being. The giant fixed its pupilless, emotionless eyes on Saku. His shining right hand clearly moved to attack her. The giant palm fell like a guillotine. It was too fast to catch up to. It couldn't be stopped. It looked like the hand of fate would finally take her. Hi, Rudy! So the white right arm was shattered in pieces before it could reach her. Back on the surface, the giant had kicked off Rudy and jumped into the fissure. It was clearly going after the two who went to the Singularity. It might have been an act of self-defense as a device, or a kind of instinct. Regardless, it knew that that Narita and Saku were the poisoned dagger. Yuri was standing atop the giant's head, which covered the space above us like a canopy. It was a ghastly, haughty and proud smile on her face. Despite her expression, she was wounded all over. You would have an easier time counting where she wasn't hurt than where she was. Her limbs had lost their original shapes. They were more like crimson sticks. Oh! And Rudy had clung to the giant after it jumped into the fissure. About half her body was gone. She abused her power of transcendence to the point that she almost destroyed herself. But in this short fall, she couldn't recover to more than this.
どうして私を？物事は順番よ。この大きいのを片付けたら、次はお前。それからお兄様。こんなところで勝手に死なないで。
They couldn't hear each other. The intense wind from the fall made it almost impossible for sound to travel.
さあ、お前ともずいぶん長く一緒にいたけれど、そろそろお別れしましょう。付きまとう殿方は好きではないの。私はもっと先へ行くわ。
She raised her right hand, but before she swung it down as she froze, she then tilted her head as though she remembered
一
something.
番最初にそう思ったのはいつだったかしら。あれは、そう、あの女。思い出してみれば、つまらない子守。
Saku saw Rudy's smile. It wasn't the grin of someone who thought they owned the world. It was a beautiful, faint expression reminiscent of white snow that would melt in an instant.
任せるわ、お兄様。しくじったら承知しないわよ。ちょっと待ちなさい。何を勝手な真似を。
Rudy swung her hand down. Her power spread from the giant's head to its entire body. The white outline lost its shape and blew apart, creating countless bits of light that flowed like a meteor shower. Ow. In the bright shower, Saku saw a white feather-like dress, making her forget her limits and use her halo. She used her remaining energy to cancel out her falling speed and rise out of stardust sea left behind by the giant. Went down with my back facing the 2 dazzling girls rising above. Letting gravity take me, I free fell into the singularity. Like Naruto's just falling like... What the fuck am I supposed to do now? Simon, it doesn't seem like a good idea! He's not listening. More like she can't hear me, probably. Oh well. At least someone died from the impact. It's taking a while, though. What the fuck does the singularity look like, anyways? Is it gonna be like a typical giant ball of light? Potentially. Man, I should have brought a book. I was falling into the abyss. The beautiful thing I just saw made me feel fulfilled. It was a glimpse of the light of mankind opposed to the world, and nothing like the destructive light of the giant. Faint and small like a delusion, yet stronger than anything. This light was akin to a halo. Without any regrets or hesitation, I would do the last thing I had to do. The destination was near. Only a few seconds were left. I began counting down. Stop this tragedy.
かの愛深きリア王の娘は哀れな老王を救おうとしたが欺瞞と言葉の前に敗れ去った。コーディリアが願った正義が果たされることはなかった。今その言葉を借りよう。この一瞬でも1秒でも目の前で悲劇を止めるために。Time shall afford, but plighted cunning heart type. King Lear 5. Run.
Oh yeah, the man gets a King Lear too. That was an immense power pulsating below, a feeling beyond the 5 main ones perceived the singularity as something akin to a star. What's the point linking this and the other side?
さあ、世界とやらを救おう!
Let's save the world and whatnot! I will stop the singularity. I will use this cursed power that denies advancement, change, and reality to face the fissure of the world. I extend my right hand, imagining myself grabbing hold onto a burning star. Couldn't stop what I couldn't perceive, but since I touched the owl in the contact experiment, I was worthy of silencing this. Stop. This was beyond the whole world. It overflowed with heat that was too great to describe. Stop. My hand didn't break before the weight of the world. Stop! I pushed against the gears spinning out of control. This was the power that slowed down the world. As it lost speed, it lost vividness.
この悲劇に幕を引く。
With my hand, the heat raged like a storm as though struggling against me one last time. I wouldn't have been surprised if my fingers were blown away. I grasped it tight. In my hands, I held the newest King Lear. The King Lear 5. All life had value. Even if they were lost without meaning, or disappeared without even receiving a name, the light that existed then continued to exist even now. Even if it was forgotten forever, its actions would become footprints etched onto the world, leading all those who followed. Thus, this power which turned the moment into eternity wasn't a power of stillness. This was a halo that sang the truth of the world of man woven into the distant future. I stopped the world. Singularity became silent. I looked above and saw the giant. It tried to restore itself after Ruri destroyed it, but losing its connection to the owl made it twist its body. Without new power flowing in, it couldn't maintain its shape. The half-destroyed giant outline quickly began to crumble. I watched my victory become reality. It continued to fall at dozens of meters per second, but I didn't even hear the sound of the wind anymore. My senses were lost a while ago. The battle until now, the extreme halo processing, the miraculous act of stopping the singularity, all of that was a small price to pay. If my calculations were correct, even if Sokka was here, she'd be a bit too exhausted to bring us both back to the surface. This was a one-way trip. Thanks to Rudy following us, I didn't even have to do any convincing. Would I crash after a second or after a minute? Embraced by a fear like a dark night was about to take me. Embraced by a fear like a dark night was about to take me. For a reason I didn't know. I felt something I haven't felt during these 7 years. Wanted to go to the surface, to return to the land under the stars.
生きるべき理由はないのにどうしてそうか成田真理にはまだやり残していることがあったそう思える以上私は最後の1秒まで希望を抱き続けよう
If I mustered my life, I could use my halo just once more to... My thought was cut short by the remains of the giant, the countless bits of light grabbing onto me.
悪あがきを
Suddenly my vision changed. I was overwhelmed by light. Up, down, left, right. It was as though the entire sky's stars were falling.
これは崩れる巨人の光に飲まれたのか
Before it lost its hold on existence, as an attempt to live on, the giant grabbed onto the closest thing, me, and tried to enter the depths. What I was seeing was the world through the eyes of the giant, perhaps the eyes of Rudy, the circuit. It was a world distant to the current mankind.
つながるがいいオールの端末よ
Waves of power entered me, an emotionless, systematic program. I was almost overwhelmed and crushed by it. My will and emotions all were almost washed away.
私にはなすべきことがある
I'd committed many a sin on my path to vengeance, but what I was about to do was by no means an atonement.
接続を断たれた貴様はあと十数秒で消えるその時蓄えられた膨大な力は解き放たれるだろうこの地ごと吹き飛ばして余る力だが悲劇は終わる
I loathed and couldn't tolerate the unfairness of the world and cruelty of
こ
fate.
の成田真理の全てをかけてなすべき復讐を
The giant was a terminal of the owl. HMIs were those who could connect to the owl. And halos were the powers that overwrote the owl. That was why I could do this.
終末よ去れ
As though processing the calculations for a halo, I sent the order to the giant's functions.
人の滅びはいつか自らの手で選び取るだろうそれは今ではない
An end isn't appropriate if it was what? An end isn't proper if it was absolute. When we wake up from our nightly slumber, a new morning begins. We once again start walking towards the rainbow in the distance. The curtain fell and the actors all left the stage. Only the final scene was left. Rings of light were drawn in the sky. Like the rainbow halos of angels, the soft lights, neither cold nor warm, were positioned like ripples as they shone. This was the place that was once called the garden. What kind of dreams did the boorish man who built this sanctuary see when looking in this small piece of paradise? The ones who knew the answer were no longer here. Despite all the rubble and destruction around, several small flowers were still there. It seemed like the final miracle someone left on the way out.
ルリちょっと目を開けなさいルリ
Sakura Tadashi yelled as she clung to the white dress. Isha, silently standing behind them, felt something and turned around.
まさか成田様
やはりここは地上か
Before I knew it, I found myself on the surface. My memories ended where I pushed the giant back to the other side. Didn't know what happened afterwards.
よく一人で地上へ
得意点は巨人は倒せたの？
Sokka turned back to me, tears in her eyes, but she didn't move from where she was.
すべて終わった。
じゃあ空の光は？
成田様。
With a curious look on her face, she approached me, but then took a step back and opened the path to Sokka.
何をするの？今動いたら。
She must have heard my footsteps. Sokka tried to stop her, but Ruri pushed her aside and slowly stood up. She barely looked human. Despite that, she wrung out the last vestiges of her life to stand up, as though to show that she wouldn't lie in front of her brother.
瑠璃様。
あら、お前も生きていたのね。あ、作り物に生きているのか、なんて、野暮なことを聞いてしまったわ。
Apparently, she only now noticed Hishia's presence. It was clear that she couldn't see it properly anymore. It was hard to tell if she could even hear us. Second by second, Ruri's life was fading. The things that the giant destroyed were reduced to white light. The same way, Ruri was losing her form, like flowers lost their petals in the wind.
巨人にやられたせいか。
私のリア王1でもまだ追いつかなかったよ。あそこを越えるのにあとどれくらいかかるだろう。
She spoke not with anger or sadness, but with a faint smile. There was no means of stopping the send. It was a dream that no halo could make a reality. However, well, knowing full well that Ruri didn't have much time, she showed no fear of the end. In fact, it made me both profoundly proud of her, as well as achingly sad. The end was near, and yet she was still like this.
ヒシア、あなたは少しは役に立つから、お兄様のところを追い出されたらおっしゃいなさい。
Whoops.
はい、瑠璃様。
Ishia, the girl raised to be a living gun, sadly hung her head. Might have been the first time I saw her like this.
お兄様、さて、どうなさるの？
Been through many farewells like this. Mine, Ishia's eyes were full of them. Ishia's sisters, our nameless allies, the innocents who died before us, the loathsome enemies. Some died by my hand, some I watched leave on their own, and others expired in different ways. None of these many goodbyes were as heartrending as this one.
復讐をするのなら、これが最後の。何を言ってるの
Ruri faced me with a calm expression, putting her in stark contrast to Sokka, who aggressively got in between us, teary-eyed. Several seconds of silence. My right hand was shaking, but not because of the pain all over my body. Without a sound, movements in my body had come to know well. Pulled out my Luger, my oath's one arm, and aimed it at Ruri's forehead. With the giant completely gone from this world, Ruri's death would initiate the end.
もういいでしょ。どれだけ憎んでいたってこれ以上は。
憎んではいない。
ならどうして？
Narita's lust for revenge was ordering him not to let this evil
これは終わり損ねた舞台の続き。花園武士、桂木新山、夜店時の、帝黒船、帝大義。誰も彼もが舞台から降りた。今夜はようやくの千秋楽。残っているのは私と瑠璃だけだ。
The pale shining night sky reflected the one of my homeland. The small forest shrine had been burning, returning to ash. Sepia film was playing on without end. I'd been fighting for 7 years since then, for I was unable to stomach the unfairness of the world and the cruelty of fate.
瑠璃、お前はどこへ行きたかった？
前に教えてあげたでしょ。故郷の里、あの狭い鳥かご。いるのは屍ばかり。お父様も誰も彼も過去の残骸ばかり眺めて、夢の残りがに埋もれる日々を過ごしていただけ。
Without any shame, they were doing nothing but lamenting the past.
そんな中で生きたまま死んでいきたくなかったの。でもお父様も黒船たちも私をジャービル、向こう側への羅針盤たる唯一の完成品と呼んだ。箱に閉じ込めた。大切な宝石みたいに、大事な毒薬みたいに。
Rudy wasn't at fault for being born a monster. After all, she was the result of centuries of experimentation. People couldn't live on their own, so they huddled together, built societies, and bound each other in rules. If one was to shatter the shackles and try to fly, they would only be brought down. But who could stop the desire to walk as far as possible?
お前には選ぶことさえ許されなかったのだな。
My father, Kurvuna, his dogs, the system, and even society itself, denied Rudi's existence as a whole. She wasn't a person to them, but a crown to be donned by the king. That was why she tried to reach for the sky, even if it meant breaking everything around her. She was denying fate. That was Rudi Mikado's revenge.
私もまた一匹の怪物だ。己の選んだルールに従ってしか生きられない。それが壊し、奪うことでも、今さら道は変えられん。成田真理は、お前の生き方を許せない。
She wished to fly. I wished for her to be human. And our mother prayed for her happiness. The prayers of mankind were cruel. They always put people to the test.
わがままなお兄様。それは私に腐っていけというのと同じよ。
She does not look as bad as the game is trying to make it seem. Thank fuck F8 isn't the fucking stop the recording button. I should probably like check what the fuck F8 is. Hold on. Settings. Where are settings? I don't have any settings for F8. Lovely. Good. Didn't accidentally turn anything on.
でも許してあげる。
Hearing her say that in such a casual manner left me taken aback.
他の誰がダメと言っても、私がお兄様の人生を認めてあげる。その憎悪が夜明けに消える幻でも、お兄様の道のりに意味はあった。
She wasn't denouncing or judging me. I was a man who gave in to the flames of hatred and trampled over his human heart to survive and return here, yet she faced me with a smile on her face. Basically, since she lived as she wanted, and in her eyes, it was fair that I did the same.
そうか。お前が私の罰か。
成田、待って！
Lovely, the game giving me a choice again. Before Saku could run up to me, I pulled the trigger. Stars were falling and a gunshot rang out through the night. It was akin to a single tear.
最後までわがままなお兄様。
The bolt from my oath-sworn arm pierced nobody, flying off into the distance.
私も好きにするよ。
Uli looked at her selfish brother with a half-exasperated, half-perplexed face. He then giggled as though she remembered something. For the first time since our reunion, she smiled with the innocence of a real angel. Like someone off in the distance behind Rudy probably just fucking dropped because he got shot.
そんなもの、まだ捨てずに持っていたのね。
Rudy didn't have enough power to even point, so I pulled the object off my chest, put it in my palm, and extended it to her. A relic of faded days, when it was all still warm. It was a small gem young Rudy had given her brother on his birthday. A piece of lapis lazuli she'd found at the river we often played out.
捨てなかったのは私ではないよ。
Small gem was what had protected me from Rudy's all-destroying attack. The fact that this weak pebble wasn't broken through could through could only mean that Ruri herself didn't want to toss it aside. Ruri had once wished for me to be the way I was. Well, Ruri had once wished for me to be the way I was. Now she had acknowledged the past I'd accumulated. She must have regained it, the fragment of love she surely had during those days long gone.
大義といい、お兄様といい、そんな昔話を五章大事にして。
男とはそういうところがあるものだ。
For but a moment I felt like those days had come back, the memories of those times were giving me a severe heartache. But sad as it was, this pain wasn't enough to make me cry anymore.
この旅は満足だったか？
素敵な空だった。自由になって見上げる星は美しかった。街の輝きを私は愛した。どこもかしこも夢のようで、この数日は生まれてから一番楽しかったわ。
The girl's life was a dark one. She was first locked up by Mikados, then made a prisoner of the academy. I couldn't justify the sin of the tragedies she'd caused, but there must have been a more fitting, happier, different life she could have lived.
私もあの街角で買い物とかをしてみたかった。だからそんな気分を楽しませてくれたあの女にはほんの少しだけ感謝をしてもいい。
The girl wasn't able to make it as far as she wanted. Hope was a thing that we believed in, exactly because it was rarely fulfilled. It was a poison the thing we called God had given. It was a poison the thing we called God had given mankind. However, the light of hope was exactly what drove us to walk farther and further on.
素敵。本当に素敵。とても大好きよ。
The memories of these 2 days were akin to a starry sky. She thought of the crowds walking through the dazzling city lights. They were shining to the point of making her envious, and she could watch them for hours. She felt no guilt in plucking their lives, but she thought that if she'd chosen a different way, she might have been seen a different light. It was so fun that she spread her arms and spun around. The edges of her dress were akin to wings in flight. Not much time was left. Her body wouldn't last. But she had no regrets. She was able to fly. That alone made these days more satisfying than the years in the land of her birth, or the years she'd spent as a sleeping beauty. Above there was an angelic halo, as well as a rainbow leading to the eastern sky. It was beautiful, and its end there was surely
海見に行けばよかった。
one last time. She felt a bit of regret.
私が行けるところまで私は行った。ここから先はそうね、お兄様が見てくればいい。
私が？
誰でもいいのよ。私は魂なんて信じないし、私が死んだ後のことなんてどうでもいい。でもせっかく歩いたことが何もかも消えてしまうのはほんの少し寂しいわ。
My chest tightened. I had to do my best to keep my voice from shaking.
花は枯れるから咲き誇る。それでも散るのは悲しい。だから我々は託すのだろう。散った後に新たな種が実るように。己の歩みのもっと先へ誰かがたどり着いてくれることを祈りながら。
お母様がそうだったように、私がそうするように、お兄様がいつかするように。
Standing on this once-in-a-lifetime stage, Ruri spread her hands and spun once again. The girl that had it all from the start actually had nothing. She was a caged bird captured by mad men and used to fulfill their desires. And now Having broken free from this curse, she was flying as she wished.
まるで子供みたいね。そんなにだらしなくないって。
何を言って。
My vision became uncertain as though I was becoming unable to hold what was welling up. The emotion that hadn't flowed once since Rudy died 7 years ago had returned. Was I sad? Was it something else? Certain of the answer, I felt the flood of tears go down my cheeks.
Rudy.
The last traces of her life disappeared. The dam had burst and I raised my voice like a baby. Tears were flooding forth for the first time in 7 years.
Rudy.
Within the desolate ruins, she saw off her sworn enemy and embraced the man who was crying without end. The proud man who never showed any weakness was now doing nothing but crying for his sister. She put strength in her embrace, hoping that it would grant him peace, however briefly. Her heart was heavy and she could say nothing. She had laughed at her foe's demise or cursed that she was gone. Saku couldn't tell. She felt as though she'd been left behind by a feather in the wind, and though this was the end of someone she hated, she couldn't stop crying. Eventually, the sobbing stopped.
もういいの？
ありがとう。恥ずかしいところを見せてしまったな。ついでというわけではないが、あと一つだけ頼んでもいいだろうか。
いいわよ。どうぞ。
Why do I feel like the mood is about to be ruined?
この先、君は多くの苦難に遭うだろう。瑠璃が黄金であったように、君はこの世界にとって最も貴重な宝石の一つになった。その苦難に、絶望に負けることなく進めたのなら、いつか教えてくれないか、瑠璃と私の行けなかった先の光景がどんなものだったのか。
Surprisingly, the mood wasn't ruined.
成田
He went limp in her arms. At the mercy of gravity, he wasn't moving at all. It was silly to ask what was happening. Shinri Narita was beyond injured. It was a mystery why he was even alive. Sakura rushed to aid him, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. It was Hishiya. The maid gave her shoulder to Narita before Sakura asked what she was planning. Hishiya dragged him next to Ruri. Ruri's remains weren't actually there. There were only faint remains on which Hishiya put Narita's right hand.
長い。本当に長い旅でした。
Her heart ached. She couldn't help but feel that the man seemed happy, still standing before a vast meadow. A man who didn't need to stand back up ever again, looked like a child in peaceful sleep. After ending the battle that had lasted as long as 7 years, he'd finally found peace.
見てください、おとなし様。お二人はやっとただの兄弟に戻られたんですね。
Her gentle voice vanished with the wind. The night was so silent that you could almost hear the shooting stars. Why do I feel like Narita didn't die? Or you're just gonna end it there, are you? Season passed, the stormy spring and dazzling summer ended before anyone realized it. Busy days felt surprisingly short. This was one such day at the end of summer. They had all agreed to go out today, and Tamawaki Ito and Edo Takazaki were waiting for the rest of them at the main gate of the academy. What the fuck? I do not accept just loose threads on my pants. Fuck off.
あの激しい街大好きから早4ヶ月。明日から新学期とは、この夏休みはイベントらしいイベントもできませんでした。主に玉緒のせいで。
よくわかんねえけど、お前の言ってることは絶対間違ってる。
They were at the bus terminal, terminal linking Okushima and the academy. It was the last stop, and since there were no residential buildings nearby, you could say it was meant exclusively for this place. A few minutes were left until the time they'd agreed on. Because of Saku's training and her own hobbies, Ada was accustomed to being early, but Tomo tended to do everything at the last moment, so being here at this time was far too early for her. They were here messing around with each other while they waited for the rest of the girls. The surrounding mountains were covered by green that would soon disappear with the coming of autumn. The scars from the owl incident were deep. The students were mostly unharmed, but the academy had lost most of its core individuals as well as its research facilities. The damage was especially great around the plant where the giant appeared. The area looked nothing like it was. Most importantly.
あくびですか、玉緒。
The light reflected off of the glass school building was dazzling. The edges of Tamo's eyes, exposed to this, were slightly wet.
今日は集合が早かったから寝不足なんだ。つうか、あいつらまだ来やがらないのかよ。
Tamo looked away and chuckled at her own changes. A whole 3 months had passed, and this still occasionally happened, catching her off guard. Before, she'd never thought that she could grieve over something. Suddenly a girl, breathing raggedly, clung to Edo from behind. Edo let out a sound like a cat being stepped on and began to struggle.
そうだ、抱きつかないでください。しがみつかないでください。重いです。ちょっと撫でるだけだから。ちょっとだけだから。玉をなんとかしてください。空子は以前よりわがまま度が上がりました。こんな成長は最悪です。
The blonde girl clinging to Edo was Sorako Katsuragi.
お二人ともおとなしく待っていられませんの？私たちしかいないと言っても気構えというものがですね。
Are you sure show some fucking attitude in this route? Following Sorako, Mitri Sakamotoyama gracefully walked up to the group, calmly handling her fan. Side by side, Sorako and Mitri looked like a white lily and the traditional sakura tree, making the bus stop far more gaudy.
俺、負けてないからな。
I like that outfit.
エルを助けもしないで生まれついての負け犬が何を言ってるんですか。思い返せば成田に負けてから。
Edu quickly shut her babbling mouth. Then she escaped Sorako's grip and with a serious expression bowed her head to her. It was quite a rarity for this girl.
すみません。空子の気持ちも考えずに成田の名前を。
別に気にしなくていいよ。
An awkward atmosphere spread among them, and they fell silent. It was as though they were all dealing with a troublesome problem in a test.
検査の結果、出たんだろ？何もなかったのか？
Tomoe tried to change the subject to disperse the awkwardness, but she ended up asking something
こ
related.
の間、新しくスクールに来られた先生にも調べてもらいましたが、私も桂木さんも健康そのもので後遺症も何もないそうです。
During the owl incident, Soroko and Mitri suffered severe injuries. Honestly, they were as good as dead. They were found after it was all over, buried under the rubble of the school building, reduced to but a frame.
どうして生きていたのか、今でもよくわからないんだ。でも、誰かが呼んでくれたような気がする。 戻ってこいって。
Sorako put her hands as though praying and looked at her memories. They were fragmented, making everything seem vague.
私も同じような声を聞いたように思います。
奇跡という名のハッピーエンドです。仲間を思う愛の、つまりはエルの力なのです。愛の前には死んだ戦士が生き返るのはもはや当然。クラウン、裏切り者を除く。
奇跡で型がつけば世の中苦労しねえっつうの。
あの声、よく知っている気が。
No one there decided to dig any deeper into this, for they all believed the same thing. They thought that the voice that saved Sorako and Mitri belonged to him. The salvaged records made it obvious that neither modern medicine nor any recorded halo could save them. But on that night, the moment when he came closer to the owl than anyone else, he might have received the ability to bring forth a miracle impossible for mankind's halos. As they fell silent in thought, the final person
今日
appeared.
は早いのね。全員揃っているなんて。
Saku Tadashi looked over the faces of her friends. With the vivid summery background, they looked like priceless gems. Normally, they would go right away. However, today Sorako had gathered her courage.
サク、バスが来るまでまだ時間があるから、ずっと尋ねられなかったことを聞くね。
どうしたの？改まって。
3ヶ月前。あの夜、成田くんたちはどうなったの？
After the incident, both Narita and Hishiya vanished. She didn't really know what happened to Ruri either. Saku alone saw it, but she didn't say much about it. Because of that, most of it was a mystery for Sorako and the rest of the girls here. Everything was calming down, but they didn't feel right. Like the final piece of a puzzle was missing.
そうですわ。曖昧なままは性に合いません。今日こそはっきり教えていただきますわ。
あなたたち。
それが悲劇でも喜劇でもちゃんと幕は下ろさないと。でないと次が始められないから。
Indeed, closure was something to be given, not something to wait for. Saku felt that her friends had grown, making her smile.
空子、みとり。
I really like Saku's outfit.
空子もみとりも、やめてください。サクの深い考えがわからないのですか？
エル、あなた。そっか。あなただって成長しているものね。
いいですか？サクはこう言いたいのです。成田は、私たちの胸の中で永遠に生きていると。そして、青空に笑顔ドーン！
ちょっと待ちなさい、エル。
いや、お前、勝手に殺すなよ。
そうですわよ。高崎さんといえど、不謹慎すぎます。
こんな時に悪ふざけしやがるその口、言わしてやろうか？てめえとはあの日の決着をまだつけてなかったな。
んだと？四天王の裏切り者の分際で、貴様は反逆者の烙印を背負って、今、ここで死ぬのだ！
もう足洗ったんだよ、俺は。
It was the end of the summer, yet those two were making the more noise than the cicadas. The sight made Saku chuckle.
エルちゃん、タマオちゃん、少し黙って。
まさか、空子が怒った？
おとなしさん、どうされたんです？随分といい笑顔なさって。
So Soraka basically like, shut the fuck up! She's trying to tell me what I fucking want to know!
今、あいつと初めて会った時のこと思い出してたんだ。初対面からとんでもなかったなって。
テロリストに襲われたサクを助けた話ですか？別に成田が現れなくても、そんな連中、サクなら一撃でした。
Humbled by the first talking to Sorako ever gave them, Meru and Tamo took refuge behind Saku.
彼はそんなことを知らなかったし、私と時の先生を見捨てて立ち去りもしなかった。
おかしなやつでした。むしろ、 おかしいやつでした。つまり変態。おかしすぎて、人形なのを忘れてしまうぐらいには。
ただのバカだよ。誰よりも自分の手でやらなくちゃいけないことがあったのに、誰よりも余計なことに首突っ込む変人だった。ま、当てられてバカになったやつもいるけどな。
でも、成田くんがそういう人じゃなかったら、僕たちは誰もここにいなかったと思う。本当に嵐のような方でしたわ。良きものも悪しきものもすべて壊して、凝り固まったよどみも隠されていたものまで残らず吹き飛ばしてしまった。私たちのことは世界を救うついでだったのかもしれませんが。
成田の場合、世界のことは父を救うついでです。絶対に。間違いなく。
The others laughed in agreement.
両方ともついでだったのよ。
Sakura covered her eyes from the sun and looked up at the
彼
sky.
は自分に恥じない道を決めて進んだだけ。そして最後まで諦めずに歩み続けた。
The storm-like transfer student who had arrived on that spring day was proud, selfish, idiotic, and perverted. Though gentle, he gave in to the flames of revenge. Though loving the future, he let the illusions of the past bind him. He valued change, but couldn't stomach the world that had transformed. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm shot! I became an Avenger as a result. You gotta warn me before shit like that.
彼の願いは果たされなかったけど、成し遂げたことはあるわ。
Kurofune Mikado had built the academy atop the graves of the Mikados. It had a proud exterior, but it was hiding something Sakura and the others couldn't see. Naruto brought down the curtains on what the academy used to be. Along with that, he destroyed the invisible cage in arrogance that they themselves held together, preventing those things from backfiring on them in the future.
さあ、振り返るのはここまで。花の命は短いの。一時だって立ち止まってなんていられない。今日は全員揃って街へ買い物に出かけるわよ。
Let's take a screenshot of that one again because of everyone's nice smiles. Sakura forcefully ended the talk and energetically extended her right hand into the sky. Everything had an end. It was programmed from the start. Though you could postpone it, you couldn't avoid it. There was no point in looking back at the past and lamenting it. Whether you chose to think of the past or forget it, the choice should be made for the sake of the future. That was why, even thinking of him, it was best to feel nothing but gratitude and joy that he saved them.
みんなで街へ買い物になんて普通の女の子みたいだね。
普通じゃないことを悩む前に、私たちはもっと普通の楽しみ方を学ぶ努力をすべきだと思うわ。
This paradise would end someday. How long would they be able to walk through it together? They would eventually go down their own separate paths, no doubt. They all knew this, yet they chose to wonder what this dream... they chose to hope that this dream would continue forever. After all, he, the one who granted them this miraculous days, must have wanted the girls to enjoy them to the fullest before they all took flight. Anyway, a lot happened, but we were able to see the end of this year's summer. The bus was here, so we began approaching it. Sodoko walked calmly, Mitsu's steps were elegant, Tamo's stride was wild, and Edo was trotting after them, while I was behind them all. Shindiri Narita had returned to enact his revenge, but his hands, despite meaning to take, had left behind so many things. Any actions could have a meaning, become footprints that could be followed by those who came after. We were here because of him, after all. Someone would eventually inherit the path we walked as well.
私もあなたみたいに歩けるかな。
Sakura Tadashi's path was far from over. I would weave my story for decades more. I didn't know how far it would go, but it would hold my head high, Try to make it as far as possible. I would catch up and pass him so I could fulfill the promise we made.
空を目指して羽ばたいた鳥の願いは叶わなかったけれど、その祈りは今も私の中につながっている。
I still refuse to believe that he's actually dead, by the way. That motherfucker will not die. Like, even if death came to claim him from old age, he would still, like, point a fucking gun at it. I guess in a way it would be fitting if he died there. It's sad, but fits. Hello, Lady Epilogue. You passed the storm? That's a hell of a feat for someone like you, said the old man. Honestly, though, this was a wasteland with various armed and warring factions. Passing through it in normal weather was impossible. This country had been in civil war for 5 years. It started when a group of people were inspired by a revolution in a neighboring country to stand against their military regime. With the political disturbance, guns began flowing in, and factions all over the country fighting for various causes quickly turned the country into a hellscape. World superpowers as well as the neighboring countries got involved as well, some funding certain factions, some secretly dispatching their own forces. Well, everyone was doing whatever. You couldn't find a peaceful patch of land here, and the flames of war were constantly generating new piles of rubble and corpses. The wasteland I passed through last night's storm. During last night's storm was one such place. If I was by myself, I could just use my tricks. But if I had to protect some refugees that were heading to the border to escape war, I had to do something a little absurd.
自分の名前ですか?
Refugee children I'd led to this ruined oasis town tugged on my sleeve and asked for my name.
エルです。た、か、ざ、き、え。
Whoops. Spelled it out to make it easy for the locals to hear. Some time had passed since I left the academy. It had been about a year since the owl incident. Apparently I just couldn't tolerate it. I had the happy end-like closure, but only Tomo and Soroka would be okay with a conclusion that half-baked. I wasn't having it though, and after over a year of investigation, I got a hint to their location. Though it was more like a rumor. I knew he was dead! Motherfucker! Unable to hold myself, I'd rushed out of the academy and chased after it.
本当ですか? やたら態度のでかい日本人? メイドを連れた? もしかして今度こそ大当たりですか?
I myself was aware that I was being absurd. I didn't even discuss it with Sokka before doing this. Did I always have the energy to do things like this? Where was it all this time? I wasn't all this time. You think I was invested in him? Of course I wasn't. No, the fact that the matter was that I was here, looking for that colossal idiot. I followed him, lost traces of him, and passed him by many times now. Yet I continued to follow the faint trail to make it this far.
ありがとうございました。早速行ってみることにします。皆さんとはここでお別れですね。ここから国境までは大丈夫だと思いますが、気をつけて行ってください。
I was on a wasteland I couldn't even imagine back when I was at the academy, saying goodbye to ragged-looking children who still had fire in their eyes like true humans should. Now alone, I headed to where they pointed me. Another day, another battle between fellow mankind. By that I mean that they were foolish as they were millennia ago. Mankind were creatures that culled the few for the sake of the many. But over the centuries, the amount of those who had to be culled had become smaller. The way we created things like organizations, rules, systems, countries, we weren't selfless enough to remain unchanged for long. Though at pace so slow that a single life wasn't enough to sense it, over the past centuries, the standard of living and infant mortality rates had changed beyond recognition. There were there would eventually come a time when even this barren wasteland would have flowers blooming over it.
この分だと明日にはつけそうですね。
She sure looks different. Couldn't tolerate it. Tolerate what? The fact that that dumbass Narita just went and destroyed the academy like that. Couldn't rest easy until I poured out my complaints on him and punched him a couple dozen times. Yeah, I know it was stupid to chase after someone into the wasteland for such a reason. Still, that was what I wanted to do once I found out where he was, so that was no helping it. This does boost Eru quite a bit. I'm gonna put her like on the same level as Sako just because of this. For Eru Takazaki, this was the very first thing she had truly decided for herself.
世界を諦めるなんてバカのすることです。
I could die today and maybe everything would end in 5 minutes. What of it? The path would lead somewhere as long as you kept on walking. What was important was to keep on moving forward while believing in what you thought was right and not breaking in the face of hardship. That had to be it. That had to be the greatest form of revenge against this cruel, beautiful world.
Today はいい風が吹く予感がするのだよ。
朝から空へ向かって決め顔は結構ですが、そろそろ出発の時間になります。邪魔にならないようご準備を。
今日の相手は時間にうるさい。私も急ぐとしよう。
さあ、今度こそ追いついてぶん殴ってやりましょう。一体どんな顔をしやがるでしょうか。
Like she finally finds him, he just says so. I've been awaiting you! How'd you know I was coming? The end of the rainbow, the edge of this ocean. It is human nature to covet something we've never seen before. There is no end to this path. Meeting, fighting, loving, betraying. While doing what is human, we keep on walking ever forward into the distance. Like, you should fucking step on the pedal. We're being followed! As I ran, breathing raggedly, a silhouette in the stopped car smiled in amusement before extending his hand and saying a certain catchphrase.
Hello? Ready?
Title drop. This man will just not die! Goodbye, gentlemen, and angelic halo. And that is one hell of a new fucking screen. We got the replay, we got the sprite mode now as well. It's fucking there select. At this point in time, if you actually have the all ages version, you'll get extra scenes. Oh, there we go. There's the scenes for these two. Taming of the Shrew and Shining Through. And our ever-living poet. You finally went off the rails! Yes, he has. All's well that ends well. So you dare proceed with the plan? Like, this here is where you'd see, like, little epilogue stories if you actually had the all ages version. And by little epilogues, I mean literally just, okay, we're gonna give you additional sex scenes once you do the final route. So that's apparently it. So, yeah. That's it! I'ma just like change the fucking music because it's going a bit too hard. Like, lovely song and all, but you know. There we go, that's a bit better. Like, lovely song and all, but by God, there's such a thing as going too fucking hard. She like, what BG do we want? Nah. Sure, let's go with this. Place of duty. Blankly, look it away. Discouraged. Discouraged too. Insane. This one is called Insane. This one looks insane. This one doesn't quite look insane. This one looks more amused, I guess I would say. Like, this one doesn't look... This one was the insane one. This one is just more amused than insane. This one is insane. This one is still, something else, I guess. She only has one pose. Shinzan. No, actually, I don't want you. Now. Mate. Tokino. Sure, Tokino. Playing dumb. Fearless. Shaken. Lamenting. Perplexed too. Smiling faintly. Angry, thinking, sorrowful. Enraged. Eyes closed. Serious. Smiling. Laughing. I would actually use a sweet smile. Too bad she's a fucking megalo. All without glasses. I actually quite like her. Like the way she looks without the glasses. More than I probably should. Ishia, it's only made outfit. Too fucking bad. Surprised. Smiling, serious, eyes closed, questioning, unexpecting, sorrowful, angry, smiling faintly, proud, dumbfounded, shaken, dissatisfied, eyes upturned, grinning, playing dumb. I like that there's a fucking playing dumb expression. Mitri, there's still only one uniform, but two poses that are only like, sure, let's call them poses. Angry gag. I know what they mean, but it just sounds like, see, she's so pissed off, she starts gagging. Casual. Sure. Those really have too many interesting... The expressions change, though. Love struck is a thing there. She never has the love struck expression when she's there, apparently then. Casual. Still love that one. Blankly. Bashful. Adorable. She has so many bashful. She has so many fucking bashful. It's great. It's lovely. Angry. Eyeless. Hold on. Just fucking look at it. This is fucking adorable. She still has a lot of bashful in that. Very bashful. Nah, plus it's just that again. It's boring. Love struck, actually. The upturned eyes. Nah, it's not that bad. Good. And she has proper angry in this position. Surprised, smiling, pain, confident. Let's go back to bashful. Bashful 8. Look at that. It's fucking cute. Now then, she just has these two. She just has a lot of concerned, quote unquote. Well, we go to Saku. I still love that this is apparently her fucking casual outfit. Like, yeah, that's what she's wearing when going out about in town. I fucking doubt it. She also has a lot of bashful. Game design theory of characters the quality of a character, how good they are, is defined by how many different bashful tabs they would have in a sprite mode. Then there's Shinri, who only has 2 poses. Oh well, that's fearless apparently. Oh well, I've been messing around enough. But yeah, with that we're done with Hello Lady. So next time we'll be moving on to Kamiyama, I assume. Go check again, just to be safe. Let's go ahead and just open the channel and go check the community post. Yep, it's still Kamiyama with 63% of 254 votes. Yikes. That's not a fucking birthday cake made out of cheese. What the fuck? I question that person's sanity. That was the person I know with the gun knowledge. They just decided to just, yes. Birthday cake, but it's literally just like a massive, like, you know, like the sandwich cheese where you get them in the pack, they're like perfectly like a fucking square. And you just like put it on toast in a sandwich machine. Basically just like a fucking massive, like, cake. Seemingly made of just a bunch of those just slapped together with like a bunch of candles in it. And I'm very distressed by that sight. Either way, that's been Hello Lady. I fucking adored it. It was great. Having a main character like that, like a main character that colorful, will always be a very big plus. I will, honest to God, I think I will actually put it slightly below 9.9. Yeah, maybe even on the same rung as 9.9 for me. To give him a bit of a boost, because 9.9 is cheating by being through 4 games. But yeah, something I do feel the need to say is I did start to feel a bit oversaturated with this game near the end, I have to say. Where I just felt like, oh, I just wanted to be over. That probably wouldn't have been a problem if I just like took a break in between. Like, I doubt this would have been a problem if I actually still had my fucking weekly streams going on that I've been trying to do. Which, by the way, I can actually start back up this week, since my brother has finally relented and given up on completing a Legends Arceus in any fucking time soon. That's lovely, so I can go back to streaming SMT5 and maybe fucking finish thing that. But yeah, that's that. Like, even if it wasn't that, but instead I decided to just go for, like, fan translation for the weekend again. That's how I usually used to do that stuff before. I'm actually thinking about, once Love Able, their fan translation in the works, and I'm thinking about doing that one. And before you ask, like, oh, that's the one that's causing so much issue, that's from Smee, and those were partially the one that were causing so much issues. Like, I already am aware that Hooksoft is on the side of the people there, and so I do plan on, like, I don't plan on just playing it without permission. I do actually plan to get help from some people I know, translating, in order to, like, write a Japanese business mail to Smee, or Hooksoft, more like, and asking them for permission if it is alright for me to record the fan translation. So yeah, that's that. Out of the way, that's all I wanted to say here. Tomorrow we'll be moving on to Kamiyama. That means there's gonna be 2 parts Kamiyama before I have 1 part Sabre the Witch. That one's also gonna be over soon. I actually probably have to start the talks for the next one. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Anyways, so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. And see you next time. Bye bye. I always feel slightly empty inside when I finish a game. Still need to look up if there's some way to buy the OST for this game. Anyways, bye.